Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to the Fitness Tracker. In this week, I'm going to show you how to create this incredible fitness tracker, complete with exercises, a full exercise schedule where you can add exercises. We're going to have a pop-up date picker for that, and we're going to be able to set number of sets, reps, and it's fully customizable. Not only that, we're going to do it completely from scratch, starting with a brand new workbook, so you're going to see every single step. I cannot wait, so let's get started. Hello and thanks so much for joining us this week. I've got a really amazing training, the Fitness Tracker. I'm going to show you how to create this incredible application, complete with exercises, fitness, and we're going to automatically be able to add exercises to your schedule with just a click of a button. We're going to show you that, and I'm going to show you how to create this incredible detailed schedule where we can add exercises to any date with a pop-up calendar, and of course automatically add and update your sets and reps per schedule per day. In fact, we're going to be doing all of that from scratch, starting with a brand new workbook, so you won't want to miss a minute of this training. I do appreciate your continued support. I only ask a few things. If you could, one, click the subscribe button down below. That's going to help us out, and don't click that notification icon bell. That'll ensure that you get these trainings each and every time we upload them, every other week just about now. Let's see how we can do it. We're going to be doing an incredible application. Also, if you do like to support this channel, I've got an incredible 250 workbook template pack that is on sale now. I'll include the link down below. That helps the channel and supports us. All right, let's get started. So let me briefly explain what we're going to be doing. Then we're going to go into a new workbook and start that out. All right, we're going to have to be able to create a navigation. We want to know what exercises we want to do on what day. So we're going to be able to track those. We want to know how many sets. And of course, we're going to be able to create new exercises. We're adding new exercises. We can add pictures for those exercises. We can set a name, the number of sets, the number of reps per set. And if we want to make it, how often do we want to do it? Maybe we want to do this one every single week, so we can set it. And we want to do it maybe for, let's say, 52 weeks, so every day of the year. And let's say we want to start on the first of the year. Yeah, that's probably better. And then 52 weeks. So let's say we want to do every week. Now, all we need to do is just click add to schedule. It's now going to be added to the schedule every single week starting on this date here. So we can automatically add those to them, and they're going to, of course, going to appear here on the schedule here. And of course, we're going to have a navigation and a pop-up. So we've got that coming to us. And also, we'll be able to select any exercises from this list, have that appear here, and have the picture appear here. We'll be able to add a picture. We'll be able to clear a picture just by that. So we've got to have a lot to do. So let's get started. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to move this over to my other screen so I can keep an eye on that. I'm going to click on a brand new workbook, and we're going to start out from a new workbook. So we've got this brand new workbook here starting out. So that's what we're going to do. All right. I'm going to put 3 sheets into this workbook. So we're going to call this the Fitness Tracker, and I'm going to save that Fitness Tracker. And we just want to make sure that we are saving it quite often, so hopefully I won't forget to do that. And you can also do automatic save. That can be quite helpful too. Okay, exercises. So we want a list of exercises. I want to know the list of exercises. That's going to be a database. I also want to know the schedule. That's going to be a database. That's going to keep track of what exercises are going to happen on what day. So we've got a fitness tracker. We've got exercises. That's going to track all those exercises. And we've got a schedule. Okay, I'm going to save this. Of course, I want to save it in my fitness tracker workbook. And we're going to call it, we don't need a new folder on that. I'm going to save this. Let's try that again. Fitness inside this, and let's call this Fitness Tracker. Got a folder set up. Make sure it's an XLM file, right? This is going to contain macros. It must be that XLSM or XLSB. And then, of course, we're going to save that. All right, so now we've saved the file. I'm going to use these first 2 columns for an admin, so we'll just give those a little bit of a different color here, as we often do. Those can be hidden, of course, and I do recommend that you hide those, and we'll keep those. We're going to call this, give it that title, so I'll go in caps, Fitness Tracker. Okay, I also want to add a custom background to this, so that's going to be nice. We might as well add that now. I've got one set up, so I'm going to click on the page layout. I'm going to click background here. Then I'm going to browse for a background that I have set up here. You can find those on the internet anywhere. That's all I did. Okay, so let's go ahead and inside here. And I've got this one, the sky background here. This is the one that I have. And I've got it kind of set up so that the first, keep an eye on this background. Notice this background is a white. The left side's white purposely on this background. And that's going to help. Okay, great. We don't need the grid lines really. I don't read them. I'll keep them maybe for a while, but eventually we're going to remove them. All right, we can set the font. I'm going to bring this down, right, because we're going to be using it a lot in the beginning. And we'll go into the home, and I'll choose AR. I think AR Destin's the one I had. Destin. Okay, so that's the one, and 30, and then I'm going to make it white. And then the font's going to be white. All right, so we'll eventually center that. I'll bring that. Let's just center that. Center that here is fine. In E3, I want to put that date. That is where that schedule date's going to go. So I'm just going to put a date in here, and then we'll format it. I'm going to stretch that all the way over to, let's say, I. So we're going to bring it all the way over here because I want to use these columns. All of these columns, let's merge and center these here. Let's go ahead and merge and center that. And I'm going to make that a white and bold font. So white, and then I'm going to go with a long date on that. So we need that there. Okay, so we've got that there, and I'll make that bold a little bit. Perfect. So what I want to do is I want to format these cells right here all the way to I as our header. So we're going to use that. And I'm going to go into the format. I'm going to right click that. Sorry, it's off the screen. I'm going to go into the fill, and I'm going to give it a fill effects, and I'm going to use a little bit of darker blue here. So I've got some colors saved in here, more colors. If you want to know the colors that are saved, what you can do is go into more colors, but what we'll do is we'll just give it a dark font. I like that color here. And that blue there, that's a nice blue here. So I'm clicking OK. All right, now I want to do something a little bit lighter on the one below. So I'm going to click format those cells here, right? Going down here, and then the fill effects here. What I want to do is I want to go with just a little bit of lighter blue. So we're going to go with this color, and then I'm going to choose just a little bit of a lighter color. So I'm going to use the same color, and then I'm going to go into more colors here. Then I'm just going to mark it a little bit lighter because I don't see anything I really like. So that's fine. I like that there. And then we'll go here. And then we're also going to use this as a light font here. So I'm going to font and white, but bold that. Okay, so that's going to be, I need that for completed. So this is going to be for completed, and this is going to be for suggested. So merge and center that. So I'm going to write completed here. Completed, because these are the completed sets that I want to know. And I also want to know what's suggested. So completed and then suggested. Okay, so here we're going to put the sets, and here we're going to put the reps. And then we're going to do the same thing here, but these are going to be suggested. So I'm just going to copy those. I'm going to paste them right here, and then I'm going to center those. So that's what we want. And I want the exercises here. So this is going to be a long column, exercises, and this is going to be the checkbox here. So what kind of checkbox? I'm going to use insert, and then I'm going to symbol. And what kind of symbol do I want? Well, I want this open checkbox here. I'm just going to insert that and put close that. Okay, so I'm going to center everything, and then I'm going to format it. So I'm going to center it, color it white, bold it, okay, and then I'm going to give it just a little bit of a color. So I'm going to format those cells there. Once again, I'm going to go in the fill effects, and actually we can just use that custom color there, which is what I like. That was the last one we created, that lighter one. That's sufficient for our last row there. Okay, good. That looks good. That's the way I want it. And then we'll give it some borders. I'll use a dark blue border here, so that's going to be sufficient. Why don't we just set our line color? Sorry, it's off the screen. Let me bring that up here so you guys can see what I'm doing here. Bring it up here, and then what we'll do is we will bring the border in here, and then line style, up still off the screen here. Colors, I'm just going to set it for a dark color. That's going to be sufficient. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is just color all those borders around there. Okay, so I like that there. That looks good. That's got a nice look into it. We can also go, let's go with white borders. I think white borders will stand out a little bit, so we'll do that. Okay, I like the white borders. Now what we're going to do is we're going to remove those grid lines because I don't really like the way they look. So get an idea of what it's going to be. Okay, very good. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to leave this empty. I'll put a calendar. This and this are going to be for our navigation, our previous and next, right? I'll put a pop-up calendar on the left side here. We've got our exercise. I'll use conditional formatting down here. So that's looking good. Let's do reps per set. This is really reps per set. So let's set that up here. And I want to do the same thing here, reps per set. And then what I'm going to do is just size them accordingly. So the exercise is going to have to be a little bit bigger. This is just going to be a check mark, so that can be small column, okay? And these can be basically the minimum. So what I'm going to do on that is just double click the column, and that's going to set those up. We don't need them much bigger than that. We can make them a little bit bigger, but we don't need them much bigger because that's just going to be numbers in there. So we don't necessarily need them any bigger than that. Although just for consistency purposes, we can add a little bit of the width onto these columns. Okay, I like that. That's looking really good. Next up, I'd like to put in the exercises. So I'm going to put in a spacer here. And right up here, I'm going to put in exercises. We can capitalize this. All right, and then I'm going to leave another spacer here. And then I want to put in all the exercise, but I'll drop it down, let's say, another row or two. All right, just one column for the spacer, exercises, so we can bring that over here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to put the actual exercise right in here. So we're skipping column L, and then in column M, we're going to put exercise because we want this specific exercise to go in there. Under that, I'm going to put the name. I want to know the name of the exercise. I'm going to skip a row, and I want to put the number of sets, so we know how many number sets. And then in there, I'm going to put that field in N, right in N, and then I'm going to skip one. In an O, I'm going to put the reps per set. We want to know how many there. And then dropping it down, skipping a row for a spacer. I want to know the frequency in every. So frequency. Okay, inside that frequency, we want every. Okay, going to need 2 there, right? So I'm going to skip 1, and then we'll put something like 1 right here, and then days in here, days, weeks, or months. So I'm going to put in a data validation here. So let's put in days, but here I want as a marker, I want to put some data validation inside P right here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into data, and then data validation. So we'll list, and the source is going to be days, weeks, or months. And then we'll click OK. All right, good. So we got that drop-down list data validation available. Again, skipping a row here. And we want to know when we're going to be starting on. So starting on, and then we're going to put the date here. So why don't we just do a marker here. And then skipping 1. And then I want to know the next date. What is the next date? Once we put that in there. And then again, we need to know how many we're going to create for our schedule. So create, and then how many, putting that down here, let's just say 30, and then scheduled exercises. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now what we want to do is I want to put the user entered fields in white. So I'm going to just hold down the control here. That actually, it's going to be this one, this one, this one. This one's going to be a merge cell. These two, right, because they need to enter here, and then next day it's going to be automatically calculated, so we don't need that. So these I'm going to put in white. These are the user entered fields. We're putting them in white, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some borders around them. So we'll format those, and then I want to put a border around here. So we'll use the same. I'll use the same border color here, this darker blue. And then I'll just do an outline on the left. We're going to make it a dotted line. So I like that. And then we'll double click here. And then what I want to do is I want to merge and center this here. So we'll merge and center it and then move it to the right. And then what I want to do here for the name is going to be a little bit longer. We'll go all the way across here, merge and center, and then justify left here. This one's going to cover everything, but I also want to have a spacer here, and then I want to put the picture, right? I want to be able to put that picture inside column R, so the spacer, and then we'll put the picture right here. So I'll have this extend all the way to column R. So we're going to merge and center that, make it bold, and we could keep it consistent. So let's go ahead and do bold. And then we'll also do this here. I'm going to center those. Those are going to be bold, white font here. We're also going to match the header there that we have. And we got enough space for buttons above, so I think that's going to work just fine. Actually, let's leave a little bit more room for the buttons because it's kind of squeezed at the top. So I'm just going to drop this down just a little bit here. Won't let us with the merge and centered cell. So let's go ahead and move those all the way across like this here. And then we'll bring the other ones down too. I want to bring those down one row here. That's going to give us a little bit more space, so we can only do. Okay, I like that there. That's looking good. Bring it. Now I've got a little more space for our button sets here. So let's go ahead and continue on. We're going to again stay consistent with our borders. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose that white border here, and then we're going to go. It's already set all the way around on the white borders. I'm going to format those cells. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fill it with that same fade that we did here. We could also simply copy and paste the fields if we want to do that. So I'm going to set the fill and the fill effects, and we're going to choose those two colors that we originally did, which is this color here, and then fade it down to this color here. And then from dark to light, clicking OK. And then one more time, clicking OK. All right, so now we've got a consistent one. Our exercise is going to need more. This is just a spacer here, so we can see it kind of form. Double clicking on this, and we want all of these right justified here. Good, I like the way that looks. Now, this one should be merge and center here. So let's merge and center that, and then right justify that. Okay, I like that. That looks good. So we've got our form set. Now let's go ahead and get these fields colored so that they can stand out a little bit more. So I'm holding down the control here, and then what we're going to be doing is we're just going to format those again. Let's go with the white border on that. just so it stands out, and then giving it a fill, fill that stands out just a little bit. We'll go with a light color just to stand out. I like that. That looks good. We could go with a darker border on that one. Either way, it's as long as it stands out, and it does stand out quite nicely. I like that. That's looking really good. The picture is going to go in here. So let's go ahead and put in picture here, and we're going to make this column big. We need to have enough space for the picture. This is going to be our header, so we'll center it. We'll bold it, right? We'll give it the same colors that we did before. I like that. That looks really good. And then I want to drop it all the way down, leaving enough space on here. So that's sufficient space for the picture. I'm going to give it a white background. I'm going to merge and center it. Center it doesn't really matter because it's a picture, right? There's no text in here. And then what we're going to be doing is I want to make sure that we have enough space for the buttons, and we want to put this one in scheduled exercises. So let's bring this out a little bit, and we want to put this, merge and center this so we have enough space for everything. Okay, I like that. That's looking pretty good here. And now let's just bring this one out so we have enough for both the date. We need a date here. Notice that this is, so I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it. I just want the formats here. That's all I really want here, because I'm going to put that date. That date is going to be automated, that next date. So we don't need to have that in white. It's not going to be user entered. We just need to have enough space for the date and enough space for the picture. And I want everything to stay on the screen so it looks good. We still have space for our button sets. We've got space for our add picture and our clear button sets below that. And also we need some space here for the button below, but that's okay. We can just set some borders here. I want to put a border below that because I wanted to surround the button with that. So some clear border on that should be sufficient. We'll go with this dark. And I just want it to stand out on the background, the border, and this border. So we're going to add that button right here. That button, add exercise to the schedule, is going to be based on the frequency, right? How often we do the frequency, every 1 day, starting on January 1st. Now this date here and also this date here, I want to format those as short dates. So I'm going to put short date in here. That's sufficient, making sure that we have enough space just by putting in a date. Or actually you can do October 20th. That's a larger date, so I want to make sure that it fills enough. Okay, I like that. That looks pretty good. We're good to go on that one. We've got pretty much the formats set up. We need to do some conditional formatting here and here for our data. All right, it's looking good. Let's give these borders a little bit more consistency. So I'm just going to hold down these. I like probably a darker border that stands out on these, something probably like that. Let's take a look at that. A white border, no, that doesn't stand out as much. So let's go with a darker border on that. Something that stands out, more consistent with our theme, which is that dark blue. Okay, so I like that. That's our dark blue. That looks nice. And so what I want to do is I want to add some conditional formatting. As users put in their information here, I want the conditional formatting to be out. So let's say we do chest here, and then we do legs here. I want some conditional formatting, some alternating conditional formatting based on this. So how are we going to do that? Well, we want to do alternating rows. So the best way to do that is to add conditional formatting based on the data that's here. So I'm just going to highlight all of the associated rows, or about as much as I want to do. And I'm going to go to the home and then conditional formatting, and I'm going to click manage rules just because I want to see the rules once I create them. New rule, and I want to use a format. Now this is going to be based on 2 conditions. 1, that there's data, and 2, based on the row that it's on. So we're going to do and, right, because it's 2 conditions. I want to make sure that E and 6, starting at 6, but that's going to be for every single row. So we don't want the $sign, right? Does not equal empty. So let's put does not equal empty. So that's one rule. What is the other one? I want it for even rows. So we're going to use mod. The mod of row 2 is equal to 0. I've used auto hotkey to automate that. That's a free program you can find under Windows. Okay, so auto hotkey, I'm going to do F2. That's going to allow us to move over here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that to 0. Okay, so that's for even rows. 1 would be for odd rows. So I'm going to copy that because we're going to use it and modify it. So the first one, what I want to do is I want to just do perhaps a light blue. So I'm going to do it a fill, and I'll give it this light blue. That's sufficient enough, and click OK, right? So nothing necessarily with the font, but what we can do is we can do inside borders. Let's do some borders on that. And we'll pick this color, let's say this color, and do dotted lines all the way around. So we'll also set the borders and click OK. And then what we'll do is we'll apply it, and we can use a larger row, let's say 99. So that way it covers a lot of different rows. Sufficient for all the exercises in the day, although I don't know how much you do, but I don't do that much otherwise, maybe in my younger days. So that's enough exercise for one day. So we see now that our even row is set up. So let's go back into condition manage rules. And now that we've copied it, we can simply add a new rule. I'm going to use a formula, and I'm going to paste it in there. But the only difference is I want it on odd rows. So therefore, I'm going to change this to 1. I'm going to format this, and then I'm going to do fill. Now I'm going to do that same color, but I'm going to go back into more colors, and I want something a little bit lighter than that, closer to white here. So there we go. That's all I want. And then, of course, I also want to do the borders exactly as I did the other borders. So we're going to set this color. I believe it was this color. No, I think it was this color here. And then we're going to go all the way around. I'll double check that because I don't remember what color. Clicking OK. All right, so let's edit this rule. Double check the color on the border because I forgot. And that was correct. Okay, good. So we're good on the borders. We're good on that. Now all we need to do is just apply to. Copy this, right? Paste it here. Make sure that the row doesn't change here when you click apply. Okay, everything looks good. Clicking OK. All right, I like that. So now as we add data here, the conditional formatting, it's got a nice alternating row, and I'm going to do the same thing. I want the same thing for exercises. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it right here. Now that's going to give us a good start on the conditional formatting. So on this cell is where I paste it. I'm going to go ahead and manage the rules here. And now all I need to do is just make changes accordingly. So we have the rules there. So I'm going to edit this rule. And of course, it's not based on E4, it is based on K. So we need to change that to K. So I'm going to make that change right here. K4 is the first one. And we also want to change the applies to. So K4, clicking OK. And then going in here, editing this rule, and also changing this to K4. It's just easier to copy and paste it than it is to create the new ones. Okay, and also the applies to, click OK. Now what do we want applies to? Obviously it's going to apply to more than just K4. So what I can do is just highlight this, and we're going to go all the way down to, let's say, 99. All right, or maybe you're going to have a lot of exercises. So let's go 9999. Okay, I'm going to do Control A or copy that. And then what we're going to do is just going to paste that in there. Click apply, making sure that the rows don't change. Click apply, and then we'll click OK. So now as we add data here, right, we also have the same conditional formatting, and that's what we want. Perfect. So we've got our conditional formatting set. We've got our format set up. Now we're ready to go ahead and add our buttons. All right, so let's continue on. Also, one of the things is I want to add this font, this particular icon here. Now this is the Wingdings font. So the checkbox or the unchecked box is going to be Wingdings font. How do we know that? Well, when we click insert, we go to symbols here, and we go to symbol, we can see that these are the two that I want to use. One, this is called Wingdings 111. This one's called Wingdings 254. They're both Wingdings, right? So if I cancel that, so 111 and 254, remember that. So I'm just going to go all the way down to here. And then I'm just going to change that to that column entirely to the Wingdings font. So Wingdings. So now as I enter those symbols, they're automatically going to, I'll use VBA to add those, but they'll automatically be formatted properly. Things are looking good. Now we're ready to add our button sets in here. And what I want to do is I'll remove this border and this border. I don't want the right and left borders because I'm going to be putting in the buttons, and we don't necessarily need the border. Those are white borders. They're not seen. You know, I clicked on them and that unhid them, although it's not obvious. That looks good. We're ready to add our buttons, saving our work, which I should have done more often. Insert. Okay, let's add some buttons. So the first thing what I want in illustration or buttons, whichever you have depending upon the screen size, I'm just going to use some square buttons, and we'll just go ahead and set those. I'll go with something like a white button. That should be sufficient. This one looks good. And then this one's going to be new exercise. Okay, once we have the button the way we like it, we'll duplicate it. So what I'm going to do is go to home, and I want that in the middle and right justified, save room for an icon. Let's give it a nice color according to our theme, which is this darker one. And then we'll go ahead and bold that. Okay, I like the way that looks. Maybe we'll go with a little bit lighter color on that. Okay, and that looks nice. Okay, so I like the way that looks. Check the button height. Let's go ahead and put that right around 0.26 should be sufficient. Okay, so we've got new exercise. I like the way that the button looks. It's formatted right, so I'm ready to duplicate that now. Control D to duplicate that. And then I'm going to move it over here, and this is going to be called save or update. So I'm just going to change this button to save /update. I'll be adding the icon shortly, but after, that'll be the second step. Duplicating that again. This one's going to be for delete exercise. So let's go ahead and change the text on that colon, delete exercise. That one looks good. That button's probably going to need to be a little bit bigger, so we'll do this to 1.3. Got to save room for the icon. Very good. Next up, I want to add some more buttons here, so I'm going to duplicate that. This one I want to put down here, and that's going to be add pick, right? We don't have a lot of space, so I'll just do add pick on that. And then we'll bring this down to about 0.8. That should be sufficient. I'm going to duplicate that here whoops, where'd it go? Let's duplicate that. It's probably somewhere. And then what we're going to be doing is I want to clear that. So we'll do clear pick. Very, very good. And we should probably put the dot there. Okay, that looks good. I like that. Add pick and clear pick. We got enough space for icons. Nearly enough. We'll make that 0.85 or 0.9.85. Just to make sure we have enough for the icon. Okay, all right, good. Then we got one more button to do. And what we're going to do along with the navigation. So I'm going to duplicate that. We need a button down here. This is going to create our exercises. So we're going to put add exercises to schedule. Add exercises to schedule. I wonder how many misspellings I've made so far. 1.6 about. Let's do a little bit more, 1.8. That looks pretty good, although we need to expand it. There we go. Okay, that looks good. And then once you change it, make sure that you want to make sure this thickness 0.26, the height of that button should be the same. Okay, this looks good. I'll add a button onto that one, and then we'll just make that 2. That looks good. That's it for the buttons except for the navigation. Okay, so let's go ahead and add that and insert. And then what I want to do is a shape, but I want to put in this angle here. I'm going to put in an arrow. So this arrow is going to be right here. And I want to put it in right about here. But let's zoom in here a little bit. I want this arrow to be like that. And I want to bring it down a little bit. I want to have the same height as the here. And I want to put in next. So let's give it the same theme color as what we've been using, which is about this one right here. And then click on next. Okay, for this one, we don't have a lot of space, right? So what we're going to be doing is formatting this and making sure that we're removing any of the spaces around that. So I'm going to go into the size and properties. That's going to launch this. We'll go into the text options here, text box here. And I'm just going to remove all the margins here. We don't need any spacing around it. Okay, so you see how that kind of it was nice. I'm going to right justify that in the middle here. And I'm going to give it the same button color. Okay, I like that. Let's bold it just like we have it. We can make it a little bit wider, so we'll do 0.5. Once we have it just the way we like it, we can also center that. Okay, I like that. That looks good. Zooming out. All I'm going to be doing is duplicating that here, and that is going to be for the previous. So we'll do this PREV, and then what I want to do there is basically switch this format. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate that, and I'm going to flip it horizontal. Bringing it over here, now we have our previous. Okay, that's good. I also want to add a calendar pop-up. Remember we saw that a little for the schedule? Let's go ahead and insert and use an icon this time. So I'm going to click on icon, and then we'll go ahead and click calendar. So we'll add in calendar. We're looking for a calendar icon. This one should be sufficient here, and I wanted a white color. So where did it go? Zoom out. There it is. All right. So bring it over here, but I want it white. So all we need to do is graphics fill and then put it into white. That's sufficient here. Zoom back to a little bit bigger, and I'm going to then just make it smaller so that we don't need it that big. And we'll just put it right about here. Okay, I like that. Let's do 0.2. Makes it bigger so people can see it at 100%. You can still see it. Everything's good. That looks good. I like the way that that looks. And now what we'll do is we will add a little bit. So we're going to left justify this and add a little bit of spacing on our date so we can center that. That looks good. Saving our work. Our screen is looking really good. Now we're ready to add those icons. So I'm going to insert. I've got some icons saved up. So I'm going to insert these pictures. And it's based on this device. And I've got all these icons. I've got, let's go ahead and choose these, including our logo. So we're going to insert those. I'm going to set them all to 0.2 for now. And let's go ahead and put in our logo. That's going to be bigger here. So I'm going to put that up here. Fitness tracker. Here's our logo. And now we're going to use this for, let's go ahead and use this for new. And I also want to use the same icon for our adding a picture. So I'm going to duplicate that and then just bring it down here. And we'll need to increase the size of this button a little bit. So also the delete is also going to use twice. So I'm going to Control D there and bring it down for the clear picture and put it there. This one we're going to use for the saver update, and this one I'm going to use for the add exercises to schedule. I like that. Now what I'm going to do is hold down the control. I'm going to make sure that they're both in the middle, and I'm going to group them. I'm going to do that same thing with the new exercises, again for every single button, grouping them. And the saver update, I'm going to add it in here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to center it and then group it. And then the delete, this one probably button could be a little bit bigger, so 1.35. And then we'll center just so that they're consistent. Okay, also align in the middle and then grouping it. And then these buttons could be a little bit bigger. Both of them could be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to make them a little bigger. We'll do, let's say 1 That's a bit too much, 0.9. I like that. That looks good. It's consistent. So what I want to do is move it over here. Again, the same thing, aligning that middle, holding down the control, aligning the middle, grouping it there. I'll be adding even more features to this. If you want to know what features you would like to see, that's going to be inside our Patreon, right? Our Patreon, where I'm going to adding brand new features, fixes, or focus every single time. So every time I have a new training, that's our Patreon. It's a great way to support us for just a few dollars a month. All right, so continuing on here, what I'm going to do is align those middles here, right here, and that way the buttons are. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to hold down the control here, and I want to make sure they're all lined up in the middle. So we can do the picture. We can also do it here. That's sufficient. And if you want to make it really good, we can align and distribute them horizontally. Good. And now another thing, especially when we're going to be changing column sizes, what I want to do is I'm going to go on the selection tool. I'm going to select all those buttons, every single one of them. And I'm going to go into the properties. I want to make sure that we're moving but not sizing with those. So inside the properties here, the shape options here, right here actually, going into the properties here. Okay, I want to make sure that we're moving them but not sizing them right here. Here's where we move but don't size with cells. That's very important for all the buttons. Okay, that way as we adjust the column sizes, the buttons won't change. Okay, saving our work. We've got a really nice screen. We are just about done with the design, and now we're ready to go into programming. But what I want to do is I want to make sure that our databases are set. Where are we going to store all this information? Well, our exercises are going to be stored in this. So let's go ahead and add that in. We need to make sure that our exercises are in. So let's go ahead and add in. What do we want for each one? Well, the first thing what I want is I want to be able to add in information into the database. So what we're going to be doing, let's go ahead and start out in row 3. I want the exercise ID. Each one should have a unique ID. So I'm going to put exercise ID here. Then I want a name. I need to know the name. I need to know what the suggested number of sets are here. And I also need to know the suggested number of reps per set. Okay, so reps per set. And then I would like to know the frequency. If we're setting some frequency quantity, I want to know that. Frequency quantity, that might be helpful if you want to add it. And what is the frequency type? Frequency type. And that could be like day, week, or month. Okay. And then I want to know when are we going to start on. Start on, right? When it started. And then I want one for the picture. Okay, so we've got all of that. Great. So we're going to call that exercises. So I'm going to merge and center that here. And then what we're going to be doing is I'm going to call this exercise. So this is exercises. And I'm going to leave this for data mapping. That's going to quickly allow us to map the data to its original forms. Okay, so I'll give this a gray color because it's kind of like an admin, giving some borders around here. And then I'll format this cell. Now, well, we won't be using a table, but we could, but it's not necessary in this case. Sometimes, especially when we do complex dashboards, I like to add it in. Okay, let's go ahead and give it just a little bit of a color here, a little bit of style, not much, not too important for the databases, but I like to do it. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and do the same thing here, adding some borders on here, formatting those. And then what we'll do is we'll just add a little bit of a fade on this one as well, so it looks nice. Then we can copy that style for our next database, which is fine, so we don't have to redo it all. And then just giving a lighter. Okay, so now that we've got a style, we've got our database set up, and we're going to do data mapping on that. We'll go ahead and add some borders on all of that. And also what I want to do is just center that. So we'll have all the information. I've got some data that I'll send. We don't need to create each one. So what I'm going to be doing is I want to make sure that we have our data mapping. So what is data mapping? Well, data mapping is the ability to map a specific field to its original form. So example, name, right? Where's our name? Our name is located in N5. I want to map that. So what am I going to do? I'm going to put N5 right here, N5. Now that's going to take, I don't really want to go back and forth on that each time, right? So the best way to do it is just use a screen capture. And what I'll do is I'll bring this all the way over here. And I'll show you how we can quickly and easily map it, because otherwise we wouldn't necessarily remember what it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my screen. I use Snag It. And I'm just going to take a picture of this section of the screen. And I want to make sure to include the headers and the here. Okay, so I've got it here, just this little screen capturing software here. And then I'm just going to copy that into my screen software, and I'm going to paste it directly temporarily inside the database. And that's going to let me see everything. So I'll bring the size down. So we can see that name is N5. We can also see that the suggested set is N7. So I'm just going to be putting that directly in here. Those suggested reps per set, we see that that is P7. And what else? We also see the frequency quantity. We see that that is going to be in 09, right? 09. So we can easily add that in here. So 09, when you have a lot of data, it makes it a lot faster. The frequency type we see is P9. And then also the start on, that's going to be N11, N11. And then lastly, the picture. Now the picture, we're going to be adding that in. That is actually going to be, I'm going to put that in B6 most likely. So, and I'll show you that. We haven't filled in that one, but I'll put it in B6. All right, so now we're done with this. We don't need this picture anymore. This one we don't need because it's going to be filled in automatically, right? So we don't necessarily need the first one because VBA is going to take care of that. We're ready. We're done with the picture, so we can delete that. So back into the fitness, let's go ahead and add in some of the admin data right in here. And this is going to help us especially create these forms, add it and save it, and for all the some of the conditional formatting, meaning when I select this, I need to know what row it is. So we're going to use that. We'll probably use up to about, let's say, 8 rows. So I'm going to give that a little bit different color here. And we'll give it this yellow color here, and we'll add some borders on top of that too so that we can see it. Okay, so in the first one, I want to know when the schedule loads. It's going to come in handy a little bit later on, but if it's loading or not loading. So we'll keep that as false for now, but we need to know whether it's loading or not, and I'll explain that a little bit later. I want to know the selected exercise row. What is the selected row? That's going to be whatever row we select here. Conditional format is going to let us know which one is selected. It's going to show up different color. I need to know what row is in here. So let's just put in row 6 for now, but it's not a formula. Okay, I'm going to format these, and I'm going to bring these, let's drop this down again, and then I want to make this to the left. Okay, so now in 3, I want to know what is the exercise ID. That's the exercise, right? If I've selected a specific exercise and it's showing up here, I want to know the ID of that, and I want that to be displayed directly inside B3. I also want to know the row that is. I want to know what row is associated, exercise row. And what does that mean? That means what row we've placed it here. We've added our database. I want to know what row it's in here. So that is going to help us display that. And of course, we're going to add in a named range for that. So why don't we do that now that we're on here? And let's center that here. And then what I want to know is I want to keep track of that. So I'm going to add a named range here. We're going to start with this particular row, header row of 3. So I'm going to insert, right? Actually, sorry, formula, name manager, new, and we're going to call it EXID, which is what it was already. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure it's dynamic. So we're going to use the offset equals offset. What are we starting at? I want to start at the header row. That's very important because if there's no data, I don't want to create an error. So I'm going to put a comma, and then I want 1 row down. That means a starting offset and 1 row down. Okay, comma, comma, no columns over. And then what I want to do is I want to count. So I'm going to use count day. I want to know how many. I'm also going to include, of course, the header. Of course, we're going to count more than 5. Let's just do a large number here. But of course, we don't want to include the header, right? We do want to include it in the formula, but we don't want to include it in the count. So I'm going to subtract 1. Then I want to, just 1 here. Then comma 1, meaning the column. So I'm going to tab out. Using Shift Tab, I'm going to tab back in. That's going to see the dancing ants around it. That means that I've got properly the correct named range. Clicking OK. All right, and click Close. Okay, so we're good with that. Now what I want to do is I want to set that row. So if I know that our exercise ID is 1, I want to know what row is associated on that. I'm going to use a formula to do that. So equals if error, right? If there's an error, I want to trap that. So we're going to use the match formula. What are we matching? I'm going to look up this exercise ID, and I'm going to base it on the named range that we just created. I want an exact match. So I'm going to put in 0. Now I want the row number, right? So I don't want the first one. So I'm going to add 3 because our first one starts on row 4. Okay, and I want, if there's an error, I just want it to show up nothing. Okay, so what that's going to do is going to return 4, and what that's going to do is going to tell me that exercise ID 1 is on row 4. That's what I want. I also want to know the next one. When I create brand new ones, I want to know the next exercise ID. We're going to use a match for that. So we're going to do equals if error. But what if there's none? I want to trap that, right? So we're going to use the max formula because I want to know the next one. The max of all the exercise ID plus 1 because that's going to be the next available one. If there's an error, there could be an error because there's no data, we're going to set the default to 1. Okay, perfect. So that means the next one is 3. We have 1 and 2. If I were to add 3 here, that next one's going to automatically be set to 4. Perfect, okay? This one, remember, we've set this for the picture name. Remember B6 picture name, right? We've already got B6 mapped to the picture name. And that means when we load or add a new picture, the name of that picture is going to appear right here in B6. We don't need the name of that picture. It's already mapped here to B6, and that's what I want. Okay, next up, I want to know the selected day row, the selected exercise day row, selected day exercise row. Okay, and that's going to be handy because when I select something, I want to know what day we've selected, and I want that to appear right here in B, selected day exercise row. Lastly, I want to know what the required fields. Let's do that, required fields. Okay, so when I save a particular exercise, but more importantly, when I add it to the schedule, if I add something to the schedule, I need to know exactly to make sure that we have all the required fields. How do we know what required fields? Well, we need the starting on date, we need the frequency, we need the days, and we need to know how many we create. All 4 of these are required. So instead of in VBA to check this, to check this, to check this, to check to make sure all 4 have values, all we can do in this case is just use the count A equals count A, just as we did. I want to know how many, right? Count A, and then all we need to do is just hold down the control here, right? And just keep clicking right here. Now it should say 4. If it's anything less than 4, right? If it's 3, we know inside VBA that it is that the user has not entered enough data, so we can tell the user that one's missing. Now on the frequency, every and the create, those are going to be numerical. So why don't we add some data validation onto that? So inside the data validation, I want a whole number here, and I want that number between, let's say, 1 and 100 should be sufficient. Okay, and clicking OK. That way the user can't enter anything else. All right, very good. So we've got a name, we've got update, so let's go ahead and save our work. I like the way that that's looking now. We're going to be adding now. What we want to do is we add a schedule. So we've got our exercise set up. We've got our formulas set up here. We've got the picture name. Everything's set up. We still need to add conditional formatting for the selected row on both of these. And we also need to update our schedule database, right? Schedule is very important because we need to save that. So what are we going to be putting inside the schedule? Well, I'm going to start that off in row 3. I like to start it off in row 3. And one of the reasons is because I have some criteria and data validation. If we delete the row, I certainly don't want to make sure we delete anything. So if we delete a row, we don't need to delete anything up here. So we're going to call this exercise schedule. Exercise schedule. So we've got the date. I want to know if it's been completed or not. Right? That's going to be just that checkbox or not checked. What is the exercise that we're doing? I need to know the exercise. I need to know the completed sets. How many sets were complete? And I also need to know the completed reps per set. And then lastly, I want to know what the suggested sets are and the suggested reps per set. Okay, so let's do suggested reps per set. Okay, so we've got all that. And I also want to know the row that's associated there. So we've got all that. I'm going to merge and center this. Let's copy this here. And then let's do unmerge. I'm going to copy these 2 here, and I'm just going to paste them inside there just to make it easier. And I'm going to paste the formats there. That should be sufficient. Okay, and then I'll paste it here too. Paste the formats here, and then we can merge and send this one all the way around here. And then we can do the same thing here. I'm just going to copy the formats here, and then pasting those formats in here. It makes things a little bit quicker. And then what I'm going to do is just to size them. I'm going to double click here. That looks really good. I like that. We can center that, bold it, increase the font a little bit, saving our work, and then continue on. Okay, so we've got our exercise schedule set up, right? We want to make sure that we know that. We also want to set some criteria up here. So I'm going to put criteria, and that means that when I load a specific day, I only want to load the exercises that's been scheduled for the specific date. So that's going to be based on date. Now, what date is that going to be based on? Well, it's going to be based on a specific date that we already have set inside the fitness tracker. It's going to be based on this date right here, E3. E3 is where we're going to be dating, so we can hit enter. So that means it's this date. Now, notice the date is in just basically it's going to be in a general format, and I like that. I don't want it necessarily in a date format like this. I'm happy to have it in the number format. So again, we'll just center all that, make it look good. We can give it a little bit of a color, but it's not really an issue here. Just so we know, I like to give it a color because we know it's not data, it's fixed. Now, one of the reasons is when I delete a row, let's say I delete this or delete something, right? I don't want to delete any of this. That's why we start on row 4 with the data. Okay, so keep that in mind. What we do want is we want the results, right? So I want the results. Where do I want to come in? I'll have the results come in right here, but I want them in a specific order. Now, when you're getting the results, we want to make sure that the headers are always the same. So what I like to do is I like to copy and paste the results. First thing I want to know is the row, and I want that row to appear right here. The next thing I want to do is everything else. So we can set everything else. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it in here. Because most often when you run advanced filters, it's because one of the header rows name is different. We're going to call this results. So I'm going to just copy this, and then we're going to call this results. And then I'm going to merge and center this. So now we've got our data set up, and we've got our advanced filter results. The idea is to run an advanced filter based on this date. Only those exercises within a specific date will show up. Right, and that's what I want. Okay, perfect. Let's continue on. What else do we want? Well, I want to make sure that we have our conditional formatting set up, and we're just about ready to add in the VBA code. So saving our work, let's go ahead and add in that conditional formatting. If I want to know what row has been selected, if I highlight all of this here, and I want that row to show up, where's that selected row? It's going to be based on the selected exercise row located inside the day row in B7. Okay, so let's go conditional formatting. We're going to add a brand new rule. It's based on a formula, and we're going to use it. This selected day row is equal to B7 equals row. And we want to give it basically the distinct color, right? So that it's obviously, we want to make sure it's within our theme. So I'm going to do the fill effects. And I want to make sure here that we'll use these darker colors here. And these two are good. So that way it's accurate. And then what we'll do is we'll want to give it a white, bold font. So bold font here, and then white. Click OK. And click OK. And that way, as soon as the row appears, let's say Pro 10 appears here, we know what row has been selected. I'm going to do exactly the same thing here. So I'm going to highlight that, go into conditional formatting, manage rules, new rule, use a formula, but this time it's going to be based on what is located in B2. So B2 is going to equal row. So now we've got that, and what I'm going to do is format that and then fill it with the exact same. We want to make sure we're consistent with our theme, consistent with our colors, giving that the color here. Okay, I like that. That looks really good. And then we'll do the dark to light just as we did before. Also, the font must also be bold, must also be white. And then we'll click OK and click OK. Okay, it is VBA that's going to change that row, but you see it's as soon as we change the row, VBA will take care of it when we make a selection change, but it's automatically go. Because when I select that exercise, I want that exercise to appear here. When I select that day, I want to know which row is selected so we can select it and make the changes accordingly. All right, things are looking really good with the screen. We're ready to start our VBA. We've got everything complete. The first thing what we want to do is we want to be able to save, update, and delete an exercise. So why don't we put in an exercise here? So we'll put in chest lifts. There's nothing like that. Okay, number of sets, let's say we want to do 10 and we want to do, let's say, maybe we'll do 3. I'm a little bit lazy today. And then reps per set, maybe 10. Okay, and then maybe we want to do it, I want to do it, let's say, for 50 weeks in a year. Okay, so 50 weeks. Actually, let's do days. That's going to help us fill up our database, right? So let's do every day. Okay, that will help fill up our data because we don't have any data. And starting on 1/1/30. Okay, so what I want to do, the first thing what I want to do is when I click save or update, I want this information to be saved inside our exercise database. And we can delete this right now. So when we delete that, we want to know that the next one is going to be ID. We also know that the row associated is not associated with any row here. That's how we know it's a brand new exercise, okay? Because there's no such thing as 1 anymore, so that can be deleted. There's no such thing as an ID 1, so we know that it's going to be brand new. Okay, so, and we also want to be able to add a picture and clear a picture. Okay, let's save our work. Let's go into the VBA Developer Visual Basic. If you don't have this developer tab, you can use Alt F11 to get you there as a shortcut. Or of course, you can also go into more and then you go to the options here and then you can customize a ribbon and you can also make sure that the developer has been selected there. That'll display it for you. Visual Basic is going to get us there. Okay, this is the sample one that I have on the other screen, so we don't need to worry about that. Okay, this is the one we're working on. We want to add some modules in there, so I'm going to insert some modules. Clicking on modules, and what's the first one? The first thing what I want to do is name that module. That way we can distinctly understand which one. We're going to call this the exercise max. So exercise max. And then I want another one for our schedule, right? So let's go ahead and insert another module. And this one's going to be called, again, going into the properties here, we're going to call this our schedule max. Schedule max. Okay, so we have two distinct modules for our macros here. So what's our exercise max? Our exercise, the first thing what I want to do is I want to be able to add the exercise. Actually, we're starting out here inside our exercise max. So we want to dimension some variables that can help. Dimension, right? I need to know the exercise row. What is the database row that's associated with that? It's going to be a long variable. I also want to know the column, exercise column. We're going to need to loop through the column, so that's going to be also a long variable. And also I want to know the last row. When we run our advanced filter, we need to know what is the last row. And I want to know what row has been selected, so we'll call that selected row as long. Also, the last result row, we need to know that because when we run our results row, we need to bring them all the way over. And the result row, in case we do, I'm not sure if we use that or not, result row as long. And also, that should be it. Okay, let's see. I also want to know, we're going to be creating that picture folder. So I need to know the dimension, the picture, we'll call this picture folder. That's one more thing we have to add, picture folder as string. And also the file path as string. And lastly, I want to know the dimension. I want to know that we're going to need to browse for that. So we'll do the exercise picture as a file dialog. Okay, there's one more thing I wanted to add in, and that's that picture folder. We just need it any place on our screen is fine for that. So let's go ahead and put that in all the way over here. Let's just set a space for our picture folder. We can do it way over here. Anywhere is fine. And we'll put in, I like this here. So I'll put in the picture folder, and then all I need is just a single space for that. Put it in X. Okay, so where's our picture folder? Well, mine's located right here. Let's bring it over here. That's where the picture, so I'm going to copy that. That's the path of where my pictures are located, and I'm going to put that right in here. I'm going to paste that right in here. And I'm also going to give it a named range for this. We're going to call it pick folder. This way I can refer to it inside the VBA. Just make sure that your variable is different than your name here. I want to make sure, because there's issues. So notice our variable is called picture folder, right? Our named range is called pick folder. So keep that in mind. Those should be separate and distinct. Great. So we have the name range. We've got the right folder. So that's it. That's the only thing I needed to add in here. Saving our work, again, always a good idea. The first thing what I want to do is I want to be able to load the list of exercises. So sub exercise load list. What does that mean? Basically, whatever data I have in here. In fact, I don't have any data. So why don't we put some data in here? So whatever data I have in here in this exercise, I want to load it into the exercise list. So let's go ahead and merge and center that. Let's pull in some data from that sample. This is the sample, right? Here's our exercises here. I'm just simply going to copy the data that I have, go down, copy that. We've got exactly the same here, all the same. And I'm just going to paste the values in here. Okay, so now we've got data. Now we can take this sample. This is the sample. We can put it back on the other screen so that I can refer to it and I don't get lost, which I usually do anyways. Continuing on, let's see. So now we've got our data in here. So that's going to help us. So the idea is I want to take all these exercise names. I want to bring them into the fitness tracker. I want to bring them in here. And then what I want to do is I want to alphabetize them. All right, so that's the first macro that we're going to be doing, exercise list. And that's going to be, we're going to do that automatically every time we save or update an exercise. I want to reload this list. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to, this is the sample. So let's reduce this. We don't want that sample. I want to keep it right here, exercise load list. So that's what we're going to do. The first thing what I want to do is let's go ahead and name these sheets. That's very important, right? Because I don't want sheet 1. So we're going to call sheet 1, I'm going to call this fitness, okay? Fitness. And then I want to call this exercises. Okay, so we'll call this sheet 2 exercises. Next up, I want to call this schedule. That way we can distinctly refer to them inside the code by their name. And it's much easier as opposed to sheet 1, sheet 2, or sheet 3. Okay, so we're focused on continuing on our exercise macro and loading that list. So the first thing what we want to do in this macro is clear any items that we already have. So with fitness, much easier, right? Making sure when you put that IntelliSense that it automatically pops up knowing you have the right sheet. Range, what is the range that we're going to clear out? Well, I want to clear out a few things. I want to clear out, one, this entire range, whatever's there, starting on K4 and going all the way down. But I also want to do the selected row, B2. Anything that's been selected, I want to clear that out. So B2 we're going to start out with, and also continuing on, right, B2, and also K4, all the way on down. So K4 all the way through K9999. Okay, dot clear contents. That'll clear that out. That makes sure that we cleared the list. So it's going to clear existing exercise. Clear existing exercises. Okay, continuing on. Now what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the last row. I want to make sure that we're clearing everything out. We did that up. I want to know the last row of the exercises. So the last row of the exercise equals exercise. Okay, make sure you have the right sheet name. Range A99, right? We're going to be running advanced. I need to know the last. Actually, we're not running. I just need to know the last row, the last exercise. If I'm going to be bringing them on over, I need to know the last row. So it's xlf.row, last exercise row. Once I have that, I just want to make sure that we actually have data. If the last row is less than 4, then we can exit the sub, then exit sub. That means we have no data. Continuing on, I'm going to bring them over. So where am I bringing them over? But I also want to do one more thing. I don't want to just bring the exercises over. I also want to bring the ID. I want this ID to come with it. So I want to bring in columns A4 through B, and I want to bring them directly inside J4 through K4. So I want to basically do that. So we're going to focus on that fitness, starting out with the fitness.range J4 through K and the last row. Now last row, because they both start on row 4, we can use the last row, dot value equals from our exercises. Actually, we could do here, let's do with fitness here. We could do the last sheet here. We're going to be focusing on that. Let's do with fitness and then bring this down. So that's because most of the work we're going to be doing is on here. So that's fine. So we're going to focus. Now we don't have to refer to the sheet here. And now we don't have to refer to the sheet here, but we do need to refer to the exercises. So I like that better, right? We've already focused on that. And now what I want to do is I want to bring in from the exercise. So equals, let's go back to the exercises, dot range. Where's it coming from? A4 through B and the last row dot value. What that's going to do is going to bring all them in. It's going to clear that out. So let's go ahead and run that code, saving our work, especially before using clear content. You always want to save your work. If I've got an incorrect field, it's going to clear everything, all that hard work out. So running the macro here, going into the fitness tracker and taking a look to see what we have there. Let's take a look. I like that. We need to increase this column a little bit, so that looks good. We have our IDs here, which we're going to hide very soon. They're here. And I like that. We can reduce this to make sure we have everything over. Okay, everything looks good. We have our exercise in here. We're going to be sorting it. We've got a blank, which we don't need, and we're going to be running that sort. Okay, so let's take a look inside here and continue on. Now all we need to do is just run that sort, bring it all the way over here. Do we have a blank here? No, but that's okay. Let's take a look at why we got the blank. Okay, well, it's not blank. It's just we just need to format it across. This one we had previously formatted, so we want it in the black font. We don't want it bold, and then left justified. Okay, so that's fine. It's sufficient enough. Now what we want to do is we want to sort them. So let's go ahead and back into the code here, and we're going to focus on that sorting, entering back into the exercise max here. Continuing on, we're going to focus still on the with fitness sheet, so we want to focus on that. Okay, let's go ahead and get that sort. Now what we want to do is I want to make sure we're going to turn off we're going to click sort by name. So that's one. I'm going to turn off application events. Application dot enable events equals false, and I want to make sure to turn it on right before we end the macro. So application dot enable events equals true. Okay, good. So we've got that set up. Now within there, I'm going to add that sort. So we're going to do I have this sort a little bit quick. Notice that was very, very fast. That is automatically programmed into my auto hotkey, and I suggest you do the same. Auto hotkey, free software. That makes things a lot quicker. We can close this out. So now we make sure we just customize it. Obviously, the sheet name is not that. We do need to specify a sheet, so it's going to be fitness here, and I also want to specify the sheet name here, making sure that we do. So now what is the key here? We're going to focus on that first one, J4. That's the one that's our first cell. And then also we want to go through also, actually the key is going to be K4 because that's the first one. Why is it K4? Because that's where the first name exists. If we take a look inside, K4 is where we first won. That's the first one. But we need to make sure our range is from J4 all the way through K in the last row. So J4 is our range, right? J4 through K in the last row, but it's last row, right? We're using last row, so that's our variable. So we need to make sure that it's last row, not last result row. And we need to make sure that this says K and not X through X. So J4 through K, that's to set the range. We're going to apply that, enable the range, right? We want them ascending from A to Z. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Again, saving our work, running this macro here, checking for any issues, and then continuing. Okay, it looks very good. Everything is set up. Now what I like to do is I don't want the ID. I don't want to show the ID. I want to hide that ID. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select that entire column, and I'm going to format that, right? But I'm going to give it a special format. Because we're using a background that's a picture, I want it just to basically make it hidden. So I'm going to use custom, and instead of general, I'm going to use 3 semicolons. 1, 2, 3. If they're numbers, you can only use 2 if necessary, but we'll just do 3. That's going to hide them. But just remember, when you click on a cell, we know the exercise ID is here. The idea is when I select on a specific exercise, I want that to place that ID. I want to place it right here. That's going to generate the row here. Once that row is generated, I'll be able to load this particular information up. Okay, great. So we've got this, and it is this macro that we just created, load list. This is the macro that's going to be running every time we save and update it. Okay. Another thing is we need to do new. We need to add a new one. So sub exercise new. So that's relatively simple. We just need to clear some cells out. So I'm going to focus on that sheet with fitness. And what cells do we want to create? Now make sure you use the IntelliSense. That means we got the name right. I want to create some cells. Range, okay. The first thing what I want to do is I want to clear out B2, right? B2, why is that? Well, that is the specific selected exercise row. I also want to do B3. That is the ID, right? That is that exercise ID that we're going to place there, right? That's that exercise row here and the ID. I want to clear out both B2. I also want to clear out all of the fields here, most of them, we can probably leave the frequency starting on, let's say you're creating a lot of exercise, you might want to keep this information here. So I really only want to clear out N through N5 through P5. I want to clear out and this probably even clear out this, because you can keep this, Craig. If you do the same number of sets, you may not want to clear that out. And I want to clear the picture out. So I'm going to keep all this information the same. We might want to use this information for multiple exercises. So whatever you have there, you might want to keep it there. It makes it a lot easier. Let's justify these to the left. Okay, that makes it a little more consistent. So really, why don't we just focus on this, continuing on N5 through P5. So let's add that in here so we don't need to clear those out. So continuing on here with our range here, comma, N5 through P5. Okay, dot clear contents. Okay, I also want to clear that picture out. That's important. So I'm going to give that picture a very specific name. If it doesn't exist, it could create an error. So I'm going to wrap it in on error resume next, and on error go to 0. Dot shapes. What name am I going to give that picture? I'm going to call it EXer pick. Okay, that's going to be the name. Delete. I want to delete it because every single time that we load it, we are going to be recreating it, so we don't need to hide it or anything like that. Okay, I also want to select dot range, and let's just select N5. I want to select that picture name, dot select. Okay, very, very easy. And then what we're going to do, that's relatively easy. Okay, good. So we've got new, but now what we want to do is we want to be able to save, or we want to be able to update an exercise, right? I want the same macro to do both. So sub exercise, save, and then update. Okay, so it's going to be the same one that does both. Again, we're focused on this particular fitness sheet. So fitness, that's the one we're working on. And then what I want to do is I want to be able to make sure that we clear the contents out when we're loading it. Right? I want to make sure. So what we're going to do is the same ones, not exactly the same, right? When I'm loading, when I save or updated one, I want to make sure that we're not clearing it out. What I want to do is I want to make sure that we check for empty fields, right? I want to make sure that we at least have a fitness name. If we don't have that, we can't add it. So if dot range N5, that's where our picture name is located, equals empty, then let the user know with a message box. Message box, please add an exercise name before saving. Okay, and then we're going to exit the sub. Okay, nothing we can do unless we have that. Continuing on, I want to determine whether it is a new exercise or whether it is an existing exercise. How do I know that? B4 is going to tell us, because B4 is blank, we know it is a brand new one. If it already contains a row, then we know it's an existing one. So we can determine that inside our code. If dot range B4 dot value equals empty, then it's a new one, right? New exercise. Else and if, okay, closing that loop, existing exercise. What if it's a new one? Well, if it's a new one, I want to assign a row to it. What row? Exercise row is simply going to be equal to the first available row in the exercise. Exercises, and it'd be dot range, the first available one inside column A, inside that exercise sheet, making sure we have that. All right, that looks good, but it's going to add one, right? The first available one, first available row. So now we know the row of it, but what I want to do is I want to add that ID, that first in column A, exercises, dot range, A, and exercise row dot value is equal to what? It's that next ID. Where's that next ID located? That next ID is located right here in B5. I want to take that ID, I want to put it directly inside A, and I also want to put it inside B3 because that's a new one. So let's do both of those. So equals dot range B5. Actually, we can put B3 here. Let's do B3. In the line before dot value, the line before we'll add that in. So what we'll do is we'll do dot range B3 dot value equals dot range B5. Okay, so what that's going to do is simply going to take that ID, that next available ID, and it's going to place it in B3. From B3, it's going to be placed inside the table. Okay, so next exercise ID. Perfect, and it's going to be the same item, so we can use the same comment for both. Paste that in there. Great, so now that we've done that, we're pretty much good for our new exercise. But what about for existing? For existing, all we need to do is just take whatever's located in B4 and assign the variable to that. That is our row. So the exercise row is simply equal to whatever's in B4, exercise row. Okay, so now that we have that, so now because we have data mapping, all we need to do is loop through those. What I mean by that, and that means basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking whatever's in N5 and placing it directly inside the column here. And here, notice we have N5 here. So I need to look inside row 1, here, looping from 2 all the way to what? What column is this? Well, if this is column 9, right, we know that H is column 8. So we're going to run a loop from column 2 to 8. We notice because we've already added the ID, we don't need to add that in there. Only moving from 2 to 8. So let's do that. For exercise column, we have already added that as a variable, equals 2 to 8. Next exercise column. So inside that, basically all we're going to be doing is taking the data dot range. Where is the range? Well, it's located in row 1, exercise dot cells, right? Row 1 is where it's located. That's the range. What's the column? Exercise column. It's variable dot value. So what is this? This is the cell. This is N5 or whatever it is. So we're going to take that value and we're going to place it. We're going to place it directly inside the exercise database. Exercises dot cells inside the exercise row, inside the exercise column dot value. Okay, save or update data. That's it. That's why we use data mapping, because it's very, very simple to use that loop. Once we have that, we can just use the message box, or we can use a fade out message, but we'll just go with the message box. Probably fade out message is nicer for sure, right? So we can do both. Let's go ahead and do the fade out message. I can write that code pretty quickly. So let's do that. So but I also want to do one more thing, right? Every time we save, remember I said we want to run this macro, we want to reload that list. So I'm going to place that down here. Okay, so save or update. So let's forget the message box and let's run a fade out message, right? So that's the next macro we're going to write, and that's a little message that we can do. Or we don't need to really write that loop, right? We can simply just write it in here. That might be a little bit easier. So what are we going to do with a fade out message? What does that mean? So what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to copy this and then I'll paste it up here. And I want a little message that's going to let the user know that they've saved it. So copy this, try that again, paste it up here. And then let's just put in here, I'm going to center that, and I'm just going to type in here, exercise saved. So let the user know exercise, and I want this shape to be faded, exercise saved. And I want this shape to automatically fade out. Sometimes you can give it a little bit of a different color so that it doesn't look like a button, right? Our others look like buttons, so we can give it a little bit of a different color. There we go. So that looks nice. So we know that the exercise has been saved. This shape I want to show up, and I want it to fade out automatically. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to give this a specific name. First of all, we'll call this exercise saved message. That's the name of the shape. Copy that so we can use that inside the code. So we're going to go inside the code. Sometimes I'll write this in a separate macro. Either way you do. So we're going to let's do a separate macro here so it's a little bit easier. So so you guys can see the difference. Exercise saved message, do that. And then what we'll do is that way you guys can copy and paste this particular macro. It's kind of nicer for you. So we're going to focus on with fitness.shapes. What is the shape name? Here it is. We're going to focus on that. So we're going to dimension the I as long, which is the same variable I use all the time. Delay as double. And the start time, right? We want to run a timer on that. Start time as double. Let's capitalize that so it's easier. Start time as double. First thing what I want to do is I want to make it visible. Make sure it's visible, double. So dot visible equals MSO true. So once it is visible, I'm going to run a loop. So for I equals 1 to 150. And don't forget to close our loop, next I. So inside that loop, what do I want to do? I want to set the fill, and I want to set that transparency. What do I want to set transparency equal to I, basically divided by 150, so that as it moves, as that I changes, so does the transparency. We're going to set that delay is going to be equal to, let's do 0.009, okay? And then what I want to do is I want to set that start time is going to be equal to the timer, right? We're setting that timer up. And then I want do and then do events, right? So let's go ahead and click on do events. And I want to loop while what? While timer minus the start time is less than the delay. So as the timer runs out, it automatically runs out. Good, I like that. Next I, let's continue that. And then do events, and we got the do. And lastly, I want to make sure that the visible equals false, right? I want to hide it equals false, okay? So we're just hiding that. Okay, end with and end sub. Okay, so now all we need, so now you can copy this particular macro separately, which is kind of nice, okay? Copy this, and I'm going to paste this as the last item. So then I'm saving our work. Okay, let's go ahead and run this last macro. Let's move that over here, right? We can bring this up here now that we're finished using it. Go back into the code. I just want to run this saved message here just so we can see that. And let's bring it down here so you can see both. And then we'll bring it up here. As I run this macro, we want to make sure to fade out. So I'm going to click run, and then let's do start time, fix that. Start time, one more T in there. That looks good. Continuing on. All right, and delay. Nice spelling there, buddy. Looked nice. Delay. All right, continuing on here. Let's see if we can get this right. Okay, so notice that thing is going to fade out. All right, so you see it's fading out and then it's gone. That's nicer than a message box. All right, continuing on, let's take a look at here. Oh, wait a second. When we're saving or updating, it is the exercises that we're going to be saving to the database. So we need to update that right here. Okay, it is the exercises. When we load the data, however, it's going to be reversed. Okay, so let's change that up here. Okay, so here's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we are going to save it directly inside the exercises, directly here. This is where we want to update it, coming from directly from here. Here's the range coming from our fitness sheet going into the exercises. Okay, that looks really good. Let's continue on. Okay, let's go ahead and assign the macros. So I'm going to right click here, assign the macros here, exercise, save and update, clicking OK. Now what I want to do is I also want to assign this one, assign the macro for our new exercise, exercise new, only on the current workbook. We haven't written the one delete or adding a picture or clearing a picture yet. Okay, so let's go ahead and save our work. Click save and update. Okay, that looks good. Chest list, so if we take a look inside here, chest list is now here. That's exactly what I want directly on this page. So we've saved it. Let's take a look inside our exercise. At the bottom, chest list has now been saved. Of course, we don't have a picture for that yet. That's fine. Okay, it looks really good. We have all of our data in here now, and we're coming up. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue on with the macros inside our code so we can update. So we've finished the saved message, and now what I would like to do is I want to browse for the picture. We still need to browse for that exercise picture, and then I want to display it. So that's going to be two different macros when we run that. Continuing on, let's get that done right now, bringing this down so we can size it up accordingly, and we'll continue on. All right, this is going to be called sub exercise browse picture. Okay, so let's just call it exercise browse pic. Okay, I want to browse for that picture, and then we're going to focus again on the fitness sheet. That's what we're working on. And then what we want to do is I want to make sure that we've deleted any picture, right? Just we've already added it up here. Remember when we cleared it, right? This picture here, I want to make sure that when we're adding any picture, we clear any existing pictures. So the first thing I want to do is clear any picture since we've already written that code. I want to make sure that we actually have a data folder. Where is that data folder? We've given it a name. Of course, we have it, right? It's located right here inside this one right here. We can color those accordingly. Let's just give it a color so we can take a quick look at it. It's much easier. So we've given it here. This is our folder here, but we've given it a name range. It's going to be really easy to refer to it, called picture folder, right? So I want to refer to that. I want to make sure that it exists inside the code. So how do we know that? Well, I want to check. So if, and then what we can use, of course, our name range, pic folder here does not equals empty. I guess we can just say equals empty. Then we want to let the user to know to please add a picture folder. Then message box, please set a folder for the exercise pictures. Okay, exit sub, right? Without a folder for those to store those pictures, we cannot move forward. Okay, but now that we have that, we know what, when the user browses for the picture, we know what folder to place it in. Okay, so we have it. Okay, then assuming that it is not empty, we can to make sure that it is correct, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to set a variable. Now we've already created a variable up here, a string variable called picture folder, right? We've got the string right here. That is what we're going to be adding on it. So if we continue here, picture folder is equal to what? Simply our variable here, pic folder. Inside the brackets, we can use it because it's already named range, pic folder. Okay, so that's going to set it up there. And I also want to add a backslash onto that, right? So the backslash, because it is that combined with the name of the picture that is going to be our full file path. So we're going to add that on there. So that is our picture folder. We'll add a comment, obviously, picture folder. Continuing on, now what I want to do is I want to browse for it. So now we've got set the X picture is going to equal to the application dot file dialog, right? What kind of file dialog? We are going to add MSO. We want a file picker. Okay, so that's the one we're going to add here. And now we're going to focus just on that one. So with the X picture, what do we want to do? Well, I want to set a title. What is the title for that? We're going to let the user know to please select exercise picture. Okay, that's going to be that title that's going to be on that pop-up. I want to set some filters on that. Why do I want to do that? Because I only want the user to add picture filters and not just any picture. So filters, add. What kind of filters are we going to do? Well, we're going to call them picture files. Picture files. And what type of picture files are they? Well, it's going to be, we can put it in JPG, so we'll put in quotation marks, asterisk, right? Any type before .jpg, JPG. What else do we want? Well, I also want to do comma and then asterisk here. We're going to add in maybe PNGs. So let's do the asterisk, .png means anything before that. And then also what else? I want to add in some GIFs, right? So we can do that. .star, like star dot GIF, right? We want to add those in GIF. Okay, once we've added in the GIF, maybe a JPEG. Okay, so we're going to add in the JPEG. Then we'll do the asterisk and then .jpg, right? Gives us enough options so the user can put in a JPEG. Well, the JPEG, JPEG, those are another format. And then also another one, let's do let's see, we got GIF. I think that's sufficient for us. Okay, we're good on that. Okay, so we can end quotes, comma, and then we want 1 as the position. Okay, very good. I like that. That's looking pretty good. Now what I want to do is I want to add in additional multiple select. So no, allow multiple select. No, just a single equals false. So we don't want the user to add multiple select. And then also what I want to do is I want to give them to check. Have they selected anything? If .show does not equal -1, and that means they have not selected anything. If that's the case, then go to no selection, no selection. Basically, we're going to skip that. And then down here, we're going to put in way down here, put in no selection, no selection. So they skip everything. In case they have not selected anything, they can get out of the loop. Okay, but considering that they have selected something, what I want to do is I want to check if they're browsing in the folder where it already, now what I want to do is I want to take whatever picture they've browsed for and I want to move it into the picture folder. But what if their browsing is already in the picture folder? In other words, the folder that we want to put it in, it's already exists. That's where the picture already is. We don't need to move it into the existing folder because it's already there. So we need to account for that inside the code. What I want to do is I want to check if selected items dot selected items 1, that's the full file path right there. If that is equal to, and how do we know that? It's going to be the picture folder, right? And what is the name, right? Picture folder and the directory of the selected items, dot selected items 1. So basically what this is going to do is going to check. Then, actually we got one more quote. Then, right, go to in destination folder. That means it's already in the destination folder. So we can do in destination folder here and do quotes. Okay, so that means it's already in the destination. We don't need to copy it over. Okay, so if it is already in the destination, we don't need to worry about. Continuing on. Now, what if, let's go ahead and move it over now. So we can simply use the file copy, dot selected items. That's where that's its current location. Where are we gonna move it to? We're gonna move it to directly here. Simply this right here. That's going to be the picture folder and that. Okay, that's where we're moving it over. Let's undo that, copy that, paste that in here. Okay, that's where we're moving it over. I'm simply going to copy its current location into the destination folder. Perfect. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to get the picture name. Where do I want to put it? I want to put it into B6. So fitness, actually we're already in. Let's see, fitness, call it the sheet again, dot range, B6, because we're inside another with. Dot value equals what? Equals the directory of that selected items, dot selected items 1. So basically that's just going to take the file name itself, not the full file path, and place it directly inside B6 places. And that's important because we want to save that picture name in the database, and B6 has been mapped at places. Picture name in B6. Okay, so we've got that there. Once we have that, I want to display that picture. I want to run a macro that's going to do just that. So we can get out of this with, right, the first one. Now if they've selected it, we don't want to display it. So I want to make sure it's above it. So let's write a macro called exercise. We're going to write that macro right now, show pic. So run macro to display the picture, to display picture. So now I'm just going to simply copy this, and this is going to be the new name of the next macro that we're going to write. So I'm going to scroll down here, get out of that. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then sub here, paste that in. That's the macro we're going to write. That's going to show the picture. So with this particular macro, all we need to do is just simply display it in the associated box. Very good. All right, let's go ahead and add an equals here. We need the title equals. Continue on now to show the picture. I want to focus again on that fitness. So with fitness and continue on, what do we want to do? I'm going to, first of all, again, just like we did before, I want to make sure just in case that the current picture is not there, right? So I want to delete any of the current pictures before we display a new one, deleting the old one to make sure it's there. I want to check for the proper picture data folder just to make sure we've done that already up here. So we can just copy this. Actually, we can copy both of these here because we're already doing that, right? Just to make sure that we have the picture folder and then assigning that to the variable. Okay, once we have the picture folder, we need the full file path. What's that full file path going to be? File path, we already have it here as a variable, so we can add that down here. File path is simply equal to the picture folder and picture folder. It already contains the backslash, and whatever located in B6.range, B6.value. That is the name of the picture. Picture file path. That's the full picture file path. Once we have that picture file path, right, I want to check to make sure that it is correct and want to make sure it's an accurate path. How do we do that? If the directory of the file path.vb directory does not equal empty, then we can continue on. Then and if. So what if it doesn't? Then we can add it on. So the first thing we want to do is insert that picture. So dot pictures, dot insert. Yes, there's no IntelliSense on dot pictures insert. So we're going to insert, what are we inserting? We're inserting that file path. So we're going to do file path and dot name. We want to give it a name. What name do we want to give it on? That same name that we've been using. So it's going to be equals exer pic. Okay, so that's the one we want to use. Dot pictures insert file path dot name equals insert pics. That's going to insert that picture into the sheet. Insert pic into sheet. As long as the shape name is correct and the file path is correct, we're good to go. So now what I want to do is, first thing I want to do is with that. Now that we've inserted it, so I'm going to do with that picture dot shapes, that particular picture we use, exercise pick. What do we want to do? Well, the first thing I want to do is lock the aspect ratio equals true. Okay, that's important because I don't want it to be contorted or construed. So now what I want to do is I want to adjust the width and the height accordingly to make sure that they're going to fit inside that cell. Now, where am I going to put that exactly? Where do I want it centered? Well, what I want to do is I want to place it directly inside column R between rows 6 and 11, and I want it centered there. So that's what we're going to do. Inside column R, between rows 6 and 7, 6 and 11, and centered. So knowing that, let's move on. So we're going to set that width. What I want to do is I first want to know if the width is greater than the height. So if dot width is greater than dot height, then I want to set a minimum or maximum height. So what are we going to set that to? Then the dot width, set the width first. Width is going to be equal to 90. Else the dot height we're going to set maybe set equal to 80. So we just want to set it, make sure that it doesn't go beyond that. Okay, so now that we have the size associated, right, since we've locked the aspect ratio, if we adjust the height, the width is automatically going to adjust. If we adjust the width, the height's also going to automatically adjust. So now that we've adjusted both, now we can set the left position. So the left position is going to be equal to, now remember we want it inside that R, so it's going to start out with R, the left position of R. So fitness, we need to call out the sheet again because we're inside of width, dot range, and R7 is where we're going to be loading it. R7, actually let's take a look inside of this R6, correct? R6 through R11. Okay, so R6, and I want to start at the left position of that, but I want to add to that. Plus, basically I want to add in the width of R, the width of the column, minus the width of the shape divided by 2. So that's what we're going to do. Fitness dot range R through R. I want to know the width of that column. Dot width. So it's going to be subtracted. What are we subtracting? We're subtracting out the width of the shape. Dot width. We're going to take that together and we're going to divide it by 2. That is going to center the picture, center the pic horizontally. We also want to center it vertically. So dot height, right, the top of the picture is going to be equal to what? Okay, again, we're going to start it out. This one's going to start out at, where is it going to start it? In R6. Okay, R6 is that top row, right? Dot top position of that. We're going to add to that. What are we adding to that? Again, very similar, but this time it's going to be the fitness dot range. What range is it? It's going to be rows from 6 to 11. 6 to 11. And I want to know the total height of those rows. Dot height. And I want to take that total height and I want to subtract out the height of the shape. Minus, right, dot the height of the shape. And I want to take all of that and I want to divide it by 2. Split it evenly because I want equal space above and below. And that's going to center the pic vertically. All right, great. So now we've centered it. But now all we need to do is just make sure it's visible. Visible equals image center, which it usually is once we've added it in. And that's it. That's going to end the width with the shape. So we can close that up, that loop. And it's also going to end if, right? So that's going to end the if the picture is actually correct. If it has a picture file path, a correct picture file path through the VB directory. Very good. So that is it. That's going to be the end, last end width based on the sheet, right? That's the end width of the sheet. And then lastly, the end sub. Okay, so that closes it. Let's continue to save it. And now let's go ahead and take a look to see, let's go ahead and add a picture. Let's put in one more macro here, and that's basically to clear the picture out because we do have a macro that's going to do that. So sub, exercise, and then clear pic. Okay, so that's the last one we have to do. And that's going to be relatively simple. Again, all we're going to do is delete the shape if it exists, and we're also going to clear out the range, okay? So all we're going to be doing is fitness. Actually, we need to add the sheet name here. That's fitness right? That shape, and also here we need to clear out the range. Dot range B6 is clear, okay? B6 dot clear content. So that's it. So we're deleting the shape and we're deleting the shape name from the sheet as well. So that's all we have to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and assign our macros and see if we have run into any issues, and we'll take a look. Okay, so for the add picture, we're gonna assign that, right click, assign macro. Sorry, it's off the screen. Right click, assign macro. This workbook is the only one we're focusing on. Exercise, okay, add new picture, right? So exercise, browse picture. Okay, this one's going to be clear picture. So again, right click, assign the macro to that. And then this time it's going to be exercise clear picture. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a picture. We're going to browse for that picture. And I've got a picture here. Let's go ahead and put that inside the fitness tracker. I've got some pictures here. Now these pictures are already inside, so that's kind of easy. It's already inside the folder. And let's go ahead and define that variable file path. Let's fix that, AT, not TA. Continuing on, let's see if we have any others. Okay, let's take a look at there. And we'll take a look. Okay, it's up here, so we need to make sure the top position is added. So notice the top position is not correct. So let's make an update in that formula. Okay, so R6, this is going to be the left. The top is equal to the height minus the height plus 2. Okay, so the top position plus, not equals, should be plus. Plus, we're adding to that. Okay, there we go. That should cover it. Continue on. That looks really good. Okay, notice that this picture is centered, although this picture has a lot of space above it, but that's okay. You see how the frame with it, it's got equal distance on the left and right. It's got equal distance on the top of the bottom. Now, if we were to crop that picture properly, right, then it would show up in the center, but it's just the way that the picture is. Good, I like that. That looks really good. We've added, and we also have the name here inside B6, which is exactly what we want. When we save that, which we just did, we go back into that and we go all the way down, we see that now it is now saved inside this last row. That's exactly what we want. Perfect. Okay, that's looking really good, although it's not the right exercise for that, but that's okay. All right, great. So we have that. Now what we want to do is when I select on a specific exercise, I want that existing exercise information to load in here. So let's write the macro that's going to do that right now. We're going to call that exercise load. So sub exercise load. Great. So we have that now. Of course, we're going to focus on that fitness sheet just as we did before. So with fitness. Okay, and inside there, the first thing what I want to do is I want to clear the contents, right? I want to clear any previous data that might be here, except for, well, not all of it, but just basically the information here, but not in B2. So I'm going to copy this here, and I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to clear the contents, but B2, I don't want to clear it out. Why do I want to not clear that? Because that's the selected row, and I also don't want to clear out the ID. So pretty much just this, right? Relatively simple. Okay, so B2 and N5. Now we can clear out more, but we'll just have it it'll replace it. That's sufficient. The name is sufficient. Everything else will update automatically. Considering that, I also want to delete any of the picture, right? This picture, the finished picture, any previous picture, I want to delete it. So we're going to paste that in here too. Again, we don't need the sheet in this case because we've already called it out with the with statement. Continuing on, what do I want to do? I want to make sure that we have a valid row. Once that ID is here automatically, B4 must contain a value. That is the row of the database that our exercise item is located on. Without that, we cannot move forward. So we certainly want to make sure that B4 contains a value. So if .range B4.value equals empty, then let the user know. Then message box, please select an exercise item to load. Okay, that should be sufficient. Okay, and then exit the sub, right, without that row. Once we have that row, we can put it into a variable, right? B4 is where it's going to come from. So let's go ahead and copy this. We've already got the variable called exercise row equals B4, exercise row. Now that we have the row, what we're going to do is we're going to basically do exactly what we did on save, but we're going to reverse it, right? So what did we do that? We ran a loop for exercise column equals 2 to 8. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to come down here inside the load. I'm going to paste that right in here, except I'm going to reverse it, right? In this case, the values, this is what we had the first time. The value inside here is going to be equal to whatever's inside the database. So we're simply reversing that here. And instead of saving or updating, we're simply loading that data. Great, but I also want to display the picture. Once the data gets loaded in, I want to display that picture. We've got that in a separate macro, and that's the reason why. Show pic, what that's going to do, it's going to automatically copy that. Great. So then we're going to paste that down here. That's going to display the picture, display picture. Now that we've got the picture displayed, what do we want to do? Well, I want to run this macro when user makes a selection. So how do we do that? I want to make sure, but I only want to display the picture if there's a value in B6. So let's just double check that. If .range B6.value does not equal empty, then we want to show that show the picture, only if there's a name within B6, okay? So we've got that situated, and we want to make sure that it's all correct. And now that we have, when do we want to display this? When the user makes a selection change. What type of selection change? Well, when they make a selection change on one of these items, we want to make sure that J contains a value. Of course it does, it's hidden, right? This is item number 2, exercise item, and so on and so forth. But when they make a selection from K4 all the way to K99, we want to make sure that J or K or either both of them contain a value. So that's what we're going to write up. And that's going to be a selection change event. That event's going to come directly inside here based on a selection change, right? So when we go into the worksheet here, we want to make a selection change, right? What type of selection change? If not intersection, right? K4, the user makes this anywhere from K4 all the way up. K4 through, let's say, K999, right? But I also want to make sure, and what else? Range K, let's use J, which is the item number J, and the target dot row dot value does not equal empty. It means it has to have an exercise number, empty. As long as those two cases are consistent, then we can move on. Then what do we want to do? Well, the first thing what I want to do is I want to put that row inside, right? I want to have that row. Where do I want the selected row? I want that selected to go into B2. What else do I want? I want the ID that's located in J2. I want that ID to go directly into B3. So we're going to do those two things before we run the macro. So range B2 dot value is equal to the target dot row, selected row. Also, again, in range B3, what's going to go in B3? That exercise ID. Where's it located? It's located in column J, equals range J and the target dot row dot value, set exercise ID. Once we have both those things, we can then run the macro, run macro to load. Very good. Oh, except I put this in the wrong sheet, right? This is the exercise sheet. I'm going to copy that, right? It should go in the fitness tracker sheet. There we go. That's the sheet I want, right? The selection change inside the fitness tracker. Let's go ahead and take a look now inside this. All right, and we see we've got it loaded up. I like that. Notice how it's loading automatically the different exercises. Perfect. So we've got that already working just fine. Good. Next up, we need to be able to delete an exercise. So we're going to write that macro right now. Back inside the code, last macro. Let's go ahead and put it inside the exercise macro here. We've got load. And next, lastly, it's going to be the exercise delete. So sub exercise delete. When we press that delete button, we want to be able to delete it. First of all, we want to make sure that the user does it. So got this on auto hotkey as well. Okay, are you sure you want to delete this? Let's remove that and let's call this exercise, delete, and then change this to exercise as well. All right, that way they have an opt-out in case they don't want to go out. Okay, the next thing I want to do is focus on the sheet with fitness, and I want to know, has it been saved before? If dot range B4, which is the row that's associated, equals empty, that means it has not been saved, and we can skip deleting it from the database. Then go to not saved. Okay, go down here, not saved, and put a colon. However, it has been saved, we do want the exercise row simply equal to B4. Okay, just as we did the range B4. Exercise row. Now that we have the exercise row, we can delete it. So with the exercise sheet, range, what is that range? It's going to be exercise row and the colon, and another side, exercise row dot entire row dot delete. Okay, so we're going to delete that row, delete row. Okay, what else do we need to do? We need to delete the picture if it exists, right? Or we can just do add new. That's probably easier, right? So we can do, which is this one right here, the add new. This is automatically going to delete the picture and clear the contents, okay? We also need to reload this list because this list will take on, so I need to know exercise new and exercise load list. Those are the two things that I want to run, the two macros, reloading that list. So going down here, and that's regardless if it's been saved, right? Exercise load list and exercise new. All right, so now we got both macros. That's going to load it, right? So this will reload the list, and this will add new, clears the contents. I like that. That's pretty good, and that's all we need to do. We're pretty much set up to delete, and I've got a few tests, and then saving our work as we always do, and then continuing on and assigning the macro to that button. So we're going to click assign that macro, and then exercise delete is the macro we want to assign to. Let's select one of the test items here, and then we'll delete exercise. Are you sure you want to delete this? Click no. And delete the exercise. Are you sure you want to do it? This time, yes. Okay, clears it out, right? Removes it from the list, right? Reloads the list. Perfect. All right, I like that. It's looking really good. That's exactly what we want. And let's continue on. Now we're ready. We're done with the exercise. We got new exercise, save, update, delete. We want to add them to the schedule, right? I want to click this button and I want to automatically add however many they are, continuing on that. And so how do we want to add them? Maybe every week or every 5. Let's go ahead and add in 50, and we'll go ahead and add them in every day, right? For create 30 of them, right? So not every 50 days, every 1 day for, let's say, 50 exercises. I like that. So what I want to do is click this button and have them added every single day for all these. So let's go ahead and write that macro now. Now that's going to be based, of course, on our scheduling macros. So what I want to do is I want to add them to this module here called schedule macros. And inside that, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to call we'll dimension some items here. So dimension the last row as long, and we'll do the last results row as long. So the first macro you want to write, we're going to call it sub schedule add exercises, because that's exactly what we want to do. So once we do that, again, I want to dimension a few more inside here. Dimension the frequency quantity as long. Okay, I want to know the exercise quantity. How many are we going to be doing? Quantity also as long. And I want to keep track of, as we're looping through them, right? Keeping track of which one we're on. So we're going to call that the exercise number. And also I need to know which row. We're going to add them to the schedule database. So I need to know which row we're adding them. Schedule row as long. Now some date variables. We're going to dimension the start on as a date. And also I want the next date as a date. The last one is the frequency. So dimension the frequency, and that's going to be days, weeks, or months, right? And that's going to be frequency as a string variable. Once we have that, we're going to then focus on that fitness sheet with fitness. And then inside that, I want to make sure, again, that the user has entered all the values. Remember this required field where we counted the A? Remember, if just one of them is missing, this is going to be 3 or less. So we need to make sure that they have entered all the correct days. And again, this makes it easier. All we need to do is check to make sure that B8 is 4. If it's anything other than that, then they have not entered the correct number of fields. So we can do that if .range B8.value does not equal 4, then let the user know through a message box. Message box, please make sure to enter a frequency starting on and create quantity fields before adding exercises to the schedule. Kind of long. Exit sub, right? So that prompts them to enter the correct ones. All of the items that are necessary. Now that they've all been added, we've ensured that, we can then go ahead and assign those variables now to the items there. So the frequency quantity is going to be whatever's located in, let's take a quick look at that so we get those right. We know the frequency quantity is located in O9, while the frequency is located in P9. So let's add those in there. Frequency quantity is going to be in O9. Call that frequency quantity, and the frequency is going to be located, don't forget the equals located in, and we'll just copy that and make that P9. Frequency is located in P9. We'll call that the frequency. Next up, we also want to know the start on, that's very important. And where's the start on date? And also we're going to need to know the schedule, exercise quantity, we need that, and I'll assign those variables in just a second. Exercise quantity to the right cells here. So that exercise quantity is going to be, let's take a quick look at that. We know the start on is in N11, while the number here, the quantity is N13. So the start on here, let's go ahead and add that in, is going to be N11, and then the quantity is going to be N13. Very good. So we've got that set up there, N11 and N13. We've got that. Next up, what I want to do is I want to set the schedule row. What row on the schedule are we going to be adding our first item to? All right, if we take a look at our database here, we're going to look at the first available row. Right here, it's 4. I need to know that first available row. So how are we going to do that? We're just going to add it. We're going to call that the schedule row is equal to the first available row plus 1. So first available row, and I need to set that to schedule, right? That's the name of the sheet. That's where we're looking. So make sure that's schedule. That's exactly what I want. That's the first available row. Once we have that, we are ready. I'm going to start run a loop. 4, we're going to keep track of it, right? We need to know, if we know we're going to need to add 10 exercises, we need to go through every single one of those 10. 4, and we're going to keep track of the exercise number. It's going to keep track of which one equals 1 to the exercise quantity. Next exercise number. Close that loop before we do anything else. Now that we have that, what I want to use the select case. And then we're going to use select case, and it's going to equal the frequency. And what is that? It's going to be based on the frequency, right? Because there's different frequencies. So it's going to be, what is the first one? Well, the first one is days, right? Case is equal to days. What if it's days? Then basically I want to take the start date and I want to add the number of days. So It's going to write it just like this. The next date is equal to, we're going to use date add function, a great function, date add. If we want to add days, we're going to use D. And how many are we going to add? We're going to add the frequency quantity. How often, right? Frequency quantity. And what is the base date? It's going to be the start on date. Start on, that's the base date. So we're adding it. Great. So what if it's weeks? Let's continue down here. Weeks, and this is going to be for months. Okay, so now what we're going to do is just going to change this to weeks. If it's weeks, we are simply going to change this to WW. It's going to add the number of weeks. If it's months, we're going to add an M for adding on months. If you're only doing maybe exercise once a month. All right, so next date is date add M, frequency start on. Okay, that's all we need to do. That is going to automatically calculate that next date. So now what I want to do is I want to simply add in that information into our database, okay? So I'm going to add it into schedule, right? Dot range. A is the first column. What's going to go in A? A is going to have that date. So what is the row? It's the schedule row. Dot value is equal to what? The next date. Next date. Set date. If we take a look inside here, we have our schedule. We have our date, completed exercise, completed sets, suggested sets, row, and all that. So we got all that information in here we're going to add in here. So we're going to add that in right now. So continuing on. Oops, that's not the one I want. This is the one I want. Schedule A. So let's go ahead and copy this. We don't need to rewrite it. We'll just update that. So we're going to add in B, C, and then D and E are going to be entered. So we don't need that F, G, and H. Okay, so let's go ahead and write that B. What's B going to be? B is going to be our unselected, right? The first thing I want to do is add an unselected checkbox. So how do we add that? Add an unselected. If we remember correctly, inside when we insert, I want to add that unselected checkbox. So I'm going to click on symbols. What is that unselected checkbox? It's this one right here. It's Wingdings character 111. So let's enter character 111. That's the unselected. We're going to do that right in here. Sorry, I keep selecting on. I got two workbooks open. That's why it's going to open. So let's add in that character right now. Equals character 111. That's the one we want to enter. And that's the unselected checkbox. Continue on. What is going to go in column C? Well, column C is going to take on the actual exercise name. Where's that exercise name? It's coming from N5, right? Equals dot range N5. That's where the name is, right? N5 dot value. Exercise name. So we've got that inside that. And now also the next up, what's going to be located in column F, G, and H. So let's update those. F, G, and H. So F is going to take on our suggested sets. And where's our suggested sets coming from? It's coming directly from here. Suggested number of sets is in N7, while the suggested number of reps per set is in P7. So we've got that, and let's go ahead and add that in there right now. So it's going to get N7 and P7 for the next two. So we can just copy this and then make the updates accordingly. We'll use the comment, include the comment, N7 and P7. So 7, that is our suggested sets, and then not 75. And then P7 is going to be our last one. Okay, so P7 is going to be our suggested reps. P7, we'll call that suggested reps per set. I like that. And lastly, I want to add that row in, right? I want to make sure that the row is going to be helpful. I want to put the row in the database right here. So that's going to be, I'm going to use a formula there, and that's going to go in column H. So back into it, it's going to be equal to, and then quotation equals, and then that row, because I want to put that row. Now we'll call it database row. Good, so we've got all the rows set up. Now what I want to do is I want to check to make sure to set the next date only on the next one. Basically what I want to do is I want to set the next date directly inside here. This next date located in P11, I want to set this up. I want to know the next 11. But I only want to do it on the first one, the next scheduled date, right? So if, in other words, only for the first one, 1 to X, right? I only want to use 1. So if X number equals 1, then dot range P, what was it, 11, right, I believe, P11 dot value equals the next date. I'll double check that. Set next date. All right, continue on. That was P11, correct. Okay, good. So we've got that. So now we set the next date. Now let's continue on. What I want to do is I want to update that start on date, right? We've already updated the next date. I want this start on date to be the next date. So here, start on is equal to the next date. Update, and that way we can continually increment that. Update, start on date. And I also want to increment the schedule row. We don't want to replace, we need to increment the schedule row for the next one. Schedule row equals schedule row plus 1. Okay, increment schedule database row. Okay, good. So we're incrementing that, and that's it. So we just loop through that. All right, very good. I'd also like to know how many exercises in a message box were created. So why don't we just do add a message box here? Message box, and I want to know the EXQT and let the user know through a message box, exercises have been added to the schedule. It's more of a confirmation so that the user knows. Okay, I like that. That looks good. Let's go ahead and save our work as we always do. And then what we're going to be doing is we're going to double check in this macro. Okay, everything looks good. So let's go ahead and assign this, right? Add exercise, nice spelling. Oh, glad I caught that. It's okay, it still would have worked. All right, continue on. We'll go ahead and copy this. All right, now that we get that spelled right, let's take a quick look at frequency quantity. Start on, oh, this is not right. N11E exercise quantity. Let's take a quick look at that. That's not correct. Exercise quantity should be the quantity that we're creating, right? We're going to create these. N13, that's where it belongs, right? N13, that's the quantity. I like that. Saving, and let's continue on. Let's go ahead and assign that macro now. I'm going to right click and then assign the macro, right? And then go down here and the add exercises, click OK. Clicking on OK, 50 exercises have been added to the schedule. Let's go ahead and take a look down here. Okay, expand that column, right? This is correct, right? If we were going to change this to Wingdings font, which is not necessary in the database, but we can see that it is correct. Okay, we've got the bridge. We completed sets. Certainly we don't want anything in there if they haven't been completed. The suggested, the reps, and the rows all right. The dates are all right every single day. Okay, great. So now that I've got all that in there, I want to take and load those exercises for one single day. That's another macro. When I create a day, when I select on a day from here, or when I go previous and next, I want that day to show up here. So that's the next macro. We're going to call that schedule load day. So that's the one we're going to work on right now. And it's going to be part of the scheduling module here. So going down here, and then the next one we're going to write schedule load day. So what do we want to do? So the first thing what I want to do is I want to, there's going to be some changes. When I make a change to here, I want it saved in the database. When I make a change here or the completed on, I want it saved in the database. That's one type of change. But when I load all of this up, that's another type of change. I need to differentiate between those two types of change. One in which a user is making changes and they want to save it to the database. The other one is when we're actually loading all the data in a day. So to differentiate between those two types of changes, I'm going to set this to true and back to false. So the first thing what I want to do is set B1 to true as we load the data. So that's the first thing we're going to do. So sub, let's add a sub on that. Load day. So fitness dot range B1 dot value equals true. Set schedule load to true. And before the macro ends, I want to set this back to false. So I'm going to copy that, go down here, paste it in there, change this to false, and we're going to change this to false. So that's good. So that's important. So now that we understand the difference between those two types of change, I also want to clear the contents, right? If we're loading any day exercise, I want to clear any of the days. So I'm going to put the row of the day, that row that's situated on right located here in column C, and then I'm going to hide it just like we hid it here. So I'm going to put the row here. I'm going to put whether it's completed or not here, but I want to clear all that data starting in C6 all the way through I and down. So that's what we must do. So fitness.range C6 all the way through C6 through I999 dot clear contents. So we're clearing out, but I also want to know to clear the selected row. That's kind of important. If we're selecting a row, I want to clear that out. That selected day row is going to be located in B7. Let's clear that out as well. So we'll add B7 onto that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to call this clear day schedule. Okay, once that is, we're going to focus directly on the schedule. With schedule, that's where we need to run our advanced filter. And what are we going to do? The first thing what I want to do is determine the last row. What is that last row? That last row is equal to A99 and XLUp, right? That's the last row. If the last row is less than 4, then we're going to exit the sub. Okay, we're going to ready to run our advanced filter. Now that advanced filter is going to start where? That advanced filter is going to start based on our schedule. It's going to start it in A3. It's going to go all the way to H3, A3 through H3 and down, right, to the last row. So we can up that up. So A3 through H and the last row. What is the criteria? We're going to only want dates, right? The criteria here is L2 through L3. So we're going to set that right here. It's going to be L2 through L3. Where do we want those results? I want those results to come right here. N2 all the way through T. Remember, we're starting with the row. N2 through T2. That's where we want our results to go. So we're going to scroll up N2 all the way through T2. I want to determine the last results row of that. So what is the last results row? The last results row are going to be based on N. So let's do that. I want to know the last results row. If the last results row is less than 3, we're going to exit the sub. If the last results row is less than 3, we're going to exit the sub. Why is that? Because there's no data, right? So we want to make sure it's going to be N in the last row. Once we know that we have last rows, this should be, that's correct. Schedule, good. Continuing on. So now once we have data, what I want to do is I want to bring it over. So I'm going to bring it directly inside our, but I also want to probably sort it, right? We're going to sort it based on the newest last, right? I want to show that, so I might as well sort it. So let's go ahead and sort it. So I'm going to add in the sort. That makes it a lot faster, okay? So of course this is not, we're focusing on our schedule sheet. So let's go ahead and add that in, schedule. And what do we want to base it on? I'm going to base it on the row number, right? You could pretty much base it on the row. That way it's going to be the last added. So I'm going to set that sort based on N3 right here. I'm going to make it ascending. So N3 is where we're going to base it on. We're going to make it ascending. And where do we want that? Let's update the sheet here, not tasks, schedule, okay? And it's going to come all the way from N3 through T. So N3 through T and the last results row. The last results row is here. That's going to set the range. Okay, so that's going to sort it. So that's going to be just fine. Now, once we're done sorting it, what do I want to do? I want to place that data directly on the fitness sheet, right? So fitness.range, where's it going to go? It's going to go in C6, right? Why? That first column is going to be that row. So C6 all the way through T and the last result row plus 3. Why are we adding 3? Because our results start on row 6 here, but our results start on row 3, but we want to bring it over into row 6, so we must add 3 to compensate for that difference. Equals dot range, and it's going to come from N3 through T and the last results row, dot value. So bring in scheduled exercise items. Great. So now we set B1 to false already. So that's good. We're good with that. And I think we're good. I don't think we have much data right now, but let's go ahead and save that. And then we'll go ahead and run it, check for any issues. Run that macro just to check for any issues. Okay, there's no issues on the macro. Go in here. Let's go into the fitness tracker. And we see we've got 1, but we actually added in here. Let's make sure that that isn't. Let's see, January 1st. Let's choose January 2nd. Okay, because I don't think we have any data. Let's take a look inside the schedule. The first one started on the 2nd. So let's add that. We don't have any data on that. No problem. Change this to the 2nd. I'm going to run that macro again. Now we're going to run that macro on change of E3. So let's do that right now. We want to run that macro. I'll run it now. We'll get the data in here so that we have the data. We got 1 data. We have 1 information. Notice we have the row number here. So let's debug that and find that. Okay, so we see that J in the target row value is empty. Keep that in mind that this error could happen when you're selecting a merged cell. So if we can fix that, if target.count large is greater than 1, then exit sub. And that happened because we selected on that merge cell and it created an issue. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So this is the one we selected on. No more issue there. Okay. All right, good. So basically what I want to do is when I make a change to E3, then I want that to load up automatically. So let's write that in now. Change to E3. What do we want to happen? I want to load the macro that we just created, which is this one right here, load day. Continuing on, let's see, when we load the date, that's what I want to happen. So continuing on, it's going to be based on our fitness, right? When I make a worksheet change, not a selection change, but a worksheet change. If we make a change to E3, what do we want to happen? I want to load that E3, then run the macro, scheduled load date. So as soon as it changes, that's what I want to happen. Anytime there's a date change, okay? So if there's a date change to 1-1, it will automatically load. If we change it back to 1-2 or 1-3, perfect. Okay, so all right, let's fix this error. Obviously, we didn't get the right name. Let's continue on that. So we look at that scheduling, back in the schedule. This is where we have and C3. Obviously, that's not T, right? We want to bring that in only through I. Okay, let's fix that I. Okay, that'll be fine. Let's continue on. All right, I like that. That looks good. Everything's up. We can remove that. We don't need the extra data on here. Clearing that out. That wasn't a row we were using. So now continue on. Now it looks good. I like that. And then what I want to do is I want to have this change when I select previous next. It's going to automatically change the day. Let's add a little bit more information in. We'll reload this list. Saving and updates can automatically load that list here. We're going to add this one on. We'll do this one also on starting on 1-1, right? We can frequency. Let's do this 30 days and let's do this again every day. Let's do I'll do every 1 day for 50 days. Let's add this exercise. I'm just adding additional exercises to the schedule so that we can fill it up a little bit. We should probably not clear this out, right? Because it makes it easier. If we're going to be doing the same thing, I'll update that so that it doesn't clear out. If you have any ideas that you want to add in, I would love to hear from you just so that we know. And of course, I'll be putting your ideas right on our Patreon platform. Okay, so that's going to be great. And we also, every time we add that exercise, I also want to update the schedule, right? So every time we save, let's do that right now. Loading the day, I want to update this day every single time we save the schedule. So exercise macro, go back up here to the save and update one. That's the one right here before the save message. And I want to, so update day schedule. And this is going to update exercise list. Okay, I like that better. And now let's continue on. So now when we, let's say, save or update that, now notice that it automatically updated. I like that. Okay. And add exercise to schedule. Perfect. We should probably add it also on this one too. So the schedule max here, load day, right? Once we add it to the schedule, I also want to load the day up too, probably before the message box. I want to put that here too. Update day schedule. Nice. So that means every time we add one, it's also going. So if we decided we're going to add this to the schedule, good. So it added. So now we're doing dumbbell raises twice. Deleting an item. We didn't get to that yet, right? We want to delete that. That'll happen on our Patreon platform, right? If you want to do that plus anything else, let me know. I'll put that on. Don't forget to click the link down below. That's where you'll find us on Patreon, where I'll be doing additional features just for you. Whatever you suggest, I'll be adding in there. All right, continuing on. What else do we want to do? So now that we have the exercise done, when I want to update this, I want to make sure the updates, if I make a change here or here to sets, I want to make sure that they automatically get added in here. So how are we going to do that? We're going to do that with a few macros. But before that, I want to make sure that we also have our display date picker. I want to put a pop-up calendar here. I want to do the navigation. And I want to make the update. That's it. So what are we going to do? Let's go and add a pop-up date picker right here. Now I created a shape-based one a while ago, and that's going to be called here. I've got this date picker here. Now I'm going to include this. You can have, I'll put some links down. Actually, you can find this inside a video. I've got a video training on this. I'll include the link of that video, and then inside that video, you can also download this. Okay, so basically I've got this workbook. It's got this really cool pop-up calendar. I want to bring this calendar and use this inside our workbook. So I'm going to copy this calendar, and I'm going to put it directly in this sheet. I'm going to paste that in here. Next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into VBA, and you see here, here's the date picker, and I've got this pop-up calendar module. I'm going to drag this module inside here, pop-up calendar. Next, inside the pop-up calendar, I've got some code on the sheet here. This is the code I want. Notice we already have a selection change event. We were working with it. I don't want to copy this part because I have it already. So I'm going to copy from here to here. I'm going to copy that. Now I'm going to go inside our fitness tracker, right? And notice we already have that selection change event. So right actually under here, what I want to do is I want to add it in right here. Let's put it in right here. Actually, I want to put it right here. So here is what I have. So basically it's going to check for the calendar. If not, it's going to run a macro to save it. Okay. So when the user selects what do we want to happen? Well, I'm going to select E3. That's where our date is. Notice I put the count large down here. Okay. So making sure that it's E3, right? I put the exit sub right. The error was here that will cause us. We're exiting this up here, but we don't want E3 is a merge cell. So I want it above this. Okay. So when we select E3, I want the calendar appear. It's going to run this macro and it's going to show that calendar. All right. So now that we have it here, it's going to create that sheet automatically. So I'm going to run through that. Okay, there's a small issue with this, but I have yet to fix it, but it's very, very easy to fix it. I'm going to right click. I'm going to unhide. Now this macro created a sheet called cal pop-up, and click OK. Notice there's an issue right here. This cell C6 has an issue, kind of weird. So all you need to do is just move this. The macro created this. I'm going to bring it right over here, right over here. And I'm going to change this to if. Okay, that's all you need to do. Then I just want to drag that up if. Okay, there we go. So that's what I want. Okay, now I'm just going to bring it right over here. Drag it all the way over. Okay, it's done. Okay, we're done with this. We can hide this sheet. I'll keep it open, but you can hide it, right? So that's it. So now this looks good. This looks good. Everything looks good. Now if I change this month to 1, I noticed that 30 and 31, so I know everything's are working right. That's the only issue I found on this calendar. I have to fix it one day. But now you know. So what do I want to happen? When I click this button, I want that calendar appear. When does that calendar going to appear? Well, the calendar is going to appear when I make a selection on E3 because that's the cell that I want to change. And of course, we do need to remove this additional one because we're using a merge cell. E3 is a merge cell, right? It doesn't have to be, but probably shouldn't be, but it's okay. It works okay. I'm just going to remove that additional one. When I click on, oops, let's get rid of that. We're done with this, so we'll remove it in a minute. When I click on E3, I want that calendar to pop up. But actually, we're not going to be selecting on this. When do we really want this calendar to pop up? When I select this particular icon, that's when I want that calendar to show up. So when I select this, I want something to happen, right? I want a macro tied to this little pop-up calendar. So all we have to do is write a small macro to do that. So let's close this out, right? We don't need to save the changes for this. I'm going to save the changes that we've made in here. And now what I'm going to do, oh, one more thing you should probably do. Let me do this. I'll show you this. This calendar here, I want to copy this and I want to put that directly in this sheet. There's a sheet here already. So let's go into the shapes here. There's a selection. Let's show all. There's a calendar here. I want to remove this. Sometimes there's links in that calendar. So this is the one that I want to keep. This is a backup calendar. If something happens, if this gets deleted, it'll take this from this hidden sheet, copy this and bring it over to here. But now that we copied this one and we remove the other one, it's working just nicely because there's a few little hang-ups, but otherwise I really like it. Great. So what happens, what I want to do, clicking this, I want that calendar to appear. So let's write a little macro to do that. And that's going to be in our scheduling macros. And I'm going to scroll down and I'm just going to create a macro called sub schedule display date picker. Okay, date picker. Kind of a long name for a short macro. I think the name is longer than the macro. So all we need to do is do fitness.range E3.select because we know when we select it, it's going to appear. So that's all we need to do. Very, very simple. And then all I need to do is just tie this macro to that small calendar button. So anytime we click that, automatically that calendar is going to appear in E3. So all I need to do is right click here, assign that macro, paste in the macro that we just created, click OK. Now when I click here, that calendar is going to play. Now if we want to change the colors to a different color, we can do that if we'd like. That one looks nice. All right, so we've got this little cool calendar, right? And we'll make sure we select on January 31st, right? January 30th. Cool. So now you see when we change the dates, right? There's nothing on the first. That's what I want, right? Let's right justify this so it doesn't get out of our way. So the second has a few. So see, that's all we need to do now because any change on E3 is automatically going to trigger that. Very cool. So now let's just add in the previous and next, and I want to add in a selection. And then when we make a change on here, I want to put in that. Let's take care of the navigation. It's very, very simple. Just one line of code each. Back in here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to write two macros. Sub schedule next day and then sub schedule previous day. And so what do we have to do? All we need to do is just change it, right? Fitness for the next day dot range E3 dot value, we'll copy that, is equal to what? Is equal to the current value plus 1. So equals the current value plus 1. Good, I like that. And the previous day is even simpler, just minus 1. Very, very simple. Just a few lines of code. Perfect. All right, if I can type it right. Cool. Okay, so we got that. Now all we need to do is just assign those macros to assign those shapes to the macros that we just created. So previous day, I'm going to right click that, assign that macro, move it up here, and that's going to be called schedule previous day. And then the next one, schedule next day. Right click, assign macro, scroll down to the bottom, schedule next day. Okay, click OK, and we're done. Okay, let's line these up. I think they need to be lined up here, and I'm bringing them up here. I hope you like these from scratch. Let me know if you do. They tend to be longer, but it's nice to see it from scratch. So previous is going to change those days. You see the date changing here. And next, although we have the same exercises on the same days, except for the first, right, which doesn't have any. So we can see that it is refreshing properly. It is working properly. And we've got the calendar pop up. Very, very cool. Okay, so what do I want? When I select this, what do I want to happen? I want to take whatever sets and rep have been suggested and make them completed. I also want to save them to the database, right? Here is the row, right? Here's the row of the database. That's why it's important. I know what row to save it. I know this is on row 6. If I look in row 6 of our schedule here, we can see that it is located here. The bridge, right? 315, row 6. We've got that here. So we can then add that here. So we know what row it's on. So I know what row to add this. And I also want to mark it as completed. When I select here, I want to mark it as completed. I also want to center these. So let's click center. And I probably want to center all of these too. And we're going to center those two. So that looks nice. Saving our work. So that's the first thing I want to do. When I make a selection here, I want to change this to our completed icon or completed character, and whatever is located in the sets, and I want to set it here. Then if the user makes a change to here, I want those changes also saved. So how are we going to do that? Well, what character are we going to be entering? Let's take a look just to double check, right? When we insert those symbols, we want to make sure that we're entering either one of these. Either we're entering here the 254 or the 111, 254 or 111. That's what we're working with here. So let's go into the VBA. It's going to be based on selection change. When I make a selection change, that's what I want to happen. Okay, so going in there, I think those are not centered. Now they're centered. Let's take a look inside the selection change of our fitness here. We're back into selection change, and we can go down here. When we make a selection change, it's only one cell we're making selection change. So if not, what are we selecting? We're going to be basing it on column D from D6 all the way down, right? So D6 here to D99, D6 through D99999. And I also want to make sure that C has a value, right? C in that selected row. And range C and the target dot row dot value does not equal empty. Then we're going to make that update. So on completion selection. Okay, we'll call that. So what do we want to do? Well, first I want to check if it's completed, I want to make it incomplete. If it's incomplete, I want to make it completed. So I basically want to reverse it. So that's what we need to check for now. So we need to check to see what icon is currently there. Based on that, then we can make that decision. So let's also make sure we're not loading. So and range B1 dot value equals false, right? We don't want to load. We don't want anything to happen on when it's loading. So if B1's true, nothing's going to happen. So let's check for that icon. If target dot value equals character 111, then it's unchecked, right? Then unchecked. So we should check it, unchecked. Then we should check it else and if. Okay, so we can close our loop. So else it's going to be checked. If it's checked, we're going to uncheck it, checked. So what do we want to do? Well, the first thing what I want to do is I want to make sure that the current value is automatically set to the check. So target dot value equals character 254. Very good. So set to checked if it's unchecked. And then also what I want to do, I want to automatically, whatever's located in H and I want to bring it into F and G. So let's do that in 2 lines of code. Range F and the target row and the target dot row dot value equals range H and the target dot row dot value. Okay, set sets. Okay, I want to also do the same thing with our reps. Okay, so the reps per set. So now we're going to, but of course this is going to be G and this is going to be I. Okay, and this is reps per set. Reps per set. Okay, very good. But what if it's checked? If it's checked, I want to clear the content. So if it's checked, the target, then in this case, the target's going to become this character, that unchecked box. If it's checked, I want it unchecked. Set unchecked. If it's unchecked, what do I want to do? I want to clear the contents of both F and G. So range F, right? And then let's do it cell by cell because I'm going to make a change event on each one and target dot row dot clear contents. And then I just want to do it, we're going to do it individually. Normally we just clear it both at the same time, but I'm going to do this one individually and I'll show you why in just a minute. Okay, so we're going to clear each one of those. So F and G get cleared out. That's it. Okay, I also want to select something else, right? Because I don't want the selection change to remain. So let's just go ahead and select N5. That should be sufficient. So here, and that's going to be either one, range N5 dot select. Okay, great. So now we have that happening. Let's take a look at that. So when I click here, the rep set, when I unclick it, it clears it out. That's exactly what I want. Okay, but now what do I want to do? Well, now when I make any kind of change to here or here, I want the database to automatically be updated. Well, that's a change event when I make that change event. So let's go into that. And this one, I'm just going to copy this one here, but I'm going to update that. Okay, so this is going to focus on the change event, worksheet change event. So we're going to go down here. I'm going to paste that in here. Of course, it's not when we make D. It's going to be anywhere from D through, let's say, I. Maybe we want to change this too. So D through I. So changing that. And I also certainly need to make sure B1 is false, right? And I also want to make sure that C contains a value. That's very important, right? Then we're going to add it. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So anytime to change, we want to change in the database. And if, okay. So the first thing what I want to do is I make that change. I want to dimension the schedule row as long. I need to know what row it's on that database schedule row. Where is it located? It's located on C. Schedule row is equal where? Right here. C, this is where our database row is. We're going to be hiding that soon. Schedule database row. Once we have that row, we can then update the schedule.cells, right? Now let's just take a quick look at this, right? Oh, that's going to create an error unless I comment it out if I get out of here. Okay, so what do I want to do? I want to take a quick look. I noticed that here the completions in column D, the exercise in column E, then the F, G, and H. So it's all there. How about in our schedule? Let's take a look. Completions in B, the exercise, completions. So the columns are almost the same except there's a little bit less. This is in column B while this is in column D. So it's 2 columns less. Column 2 here and column 4 here. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so it's very easy to automatically update this. We know the row is going to be located in C. We've already put that into a variable. So if I want to update the completion in our schedule, which is in column B, how do I know which column it is? Well, I know which column because it's simply in the current column D -2. So that's going to help us very, very quickly, easily map things to that. So we can uncomment that out. The schedule, which is what we're updating, cells. What is that row? The row is schedule row. What is the column? It's the target.column -2, right? That's the column, -2 dot value. And what is that value going to be? It's equal to the target dot value. That's why it's very easy to map our data, very easy. Update schedule. Very good. And so basically when we make a single change, this is automatically going to be empty. So that's very good. All right, so we've got the date change. Perfect. I really like the way that that's looking now. Let's take a look and see how that happens. So when I update this bridge and I select here, I want to make sure that it's now completed sets and reps also inside the schedule. It's completed here. Notice on row 6, we have the sets, we have the everything is automatically updated. If I were to make a change to that, just a single cell change, let's say we were lazy that day, we only did 2 sets, and then we go back into schedule, we want to make sure that that's automatically updated to 2, which it is. Perfect. Okay, so also we don't want to see these row numbers, so we're going to go down here, and if you remember correctly, all we need to do is go into the formatting and then change those to the 3 semicolons or 2 if it's numerical. But that's okay. We'll use 3 just to be safe. 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. So now we're done, and now those are hidden. Very, very good. I really like the way that that's looking. All right, the only other thing I'd like to do probably, doesn't make a huge difference, when I select a row, we did add conditional formatting. We should put that row in B7 on the selection. So that's the selection change. When we make a selection anywhere from D, right? We can do that. We can add that target row in. That was not completely necessary, but we can do that here. Range B7 dot value equals target dot row. Okay, that's going to set that selected row, so we know which row we're on. So there we go. That's kind of nice, so we know that. All right, very, very good. I think we're done. Let's go ahead and do a quick review and see how we came. We created this completely from scratch based on a model that you saw originally. We added navigation of the days. We can create multiple exercises. We can save or update. We can delete exercises. We learned how to add a picture and clear a picture, saving our exercise information to the database. Also adding multiple exercises based on any interval. If we were to do 7 days, it would add it to 7 days. Adding it to the schedule, let's double check that because we want to add that in. And we'll go ahead and click on OK, and then we'll take a look at the schedule just because we didn't do that, right? If we look all the way down here, right, we see that we added 9/3, 9/10, 9/17, so it's added every 7 days. Perfect. We can do adding those exercises. We created this form. We added conditional formatting to both the exercises and the date. We showed you how to hide using a specific format, anything you want on a screen. We also showed you how to navigate date. We created a pop-up date picker, which is really cool. We also added additional features that we can add on selection, so we can save database information simply on selection change, or we can save it on making a manual change. It's been a fantastic training. If you do like to support this channel, so many ways to do it. You can also grab one of my 250 workbook template pack. That's 200 of my 50 of my best workbooks, and it's just for one very low price. That also comes with PDF code books so that you can view all the code online and highlight it, mark it up, or do whatever you want. They're amazing learning tools, so I do appreciate that. Don't also forget about my mentorship program. I teach you how to create your own applications for passive income. That's an amazing course. We've got developers now who are already making a ton of money using this, so why don't you jump on board? I'll include the links down below for everything. Thanks again for your continued support, and we'll see you next time.